Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Sham Kagod here. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, please do let me know. Let me know that I'm audible so that we can start with the discussion. Okay, good afternoon. Let's start then. The next topic I want to discuss is the concept of employment. Idea of employment. Done. So, in employment chapter, what we'll be discussing? We'll start with how do you define who is employed, who is unemployed, types of unemployment, the measurement of employment, unemployment, issue of employment elasticity and jobless growth, and finally, we'll discuss certain labor issues in the Indian market. Now, let me start. The whole of population, the whole India's population will be divided into two groups. Let me start with the basics here. The whole of India's population will be divided into two groups. I'll call this one group as labor force, second group as non-workers. One is labor force, second one is non-workers. Now that is point number one. And second, the labor force, the population of labor force is further divided into two parts. One, that is the population which is willing to work, and the population which is not willing to work. I'm sorry, one population which is willing to work and gets a job, and another one is the population which is willing to work but doesn't get a job. Now, many of you ask me, sir, what is this population willing to work, not willing to work, who is employed, who is unemployed, what is this non-workers, etc. Now, let me ask you a very simple question. In India, please tell me, can you employ children below the age of 14 years? Let me know. Can you employ the children below the age of 14 years? Answer is no, by the way. Don't say, sir, yes, I can employ, right? In situations I can employ, etc. My dear, if you employ children below the age of 14 years, it's child labor. It is a child labor, and child labor is not allowed. What about the pensioners? Pensioners above the age of 60 years, they are not willing to work. What about, I'll just give a very simple example. Don't write it in the exam. What if there is a person who is a software engineer and and like this software engineer says, I want to prepare for UPSC for next 1 year, and this software engineer will quit the job, right? Yes or no? The software engineer, right, who has a job, but they want to write a UPSC exam for 1 year, they will simply quit the job. Can I say that is population which is unwilling to work? Everybody is okay with this? The population which is unwilling to work. Right? For example, people who will pursue for a higher degree, people who are enjoying their 60 plus years of age, they are pensioners. They say, no, I don't want to work. I just want to take rest now. Right? Children below the age of 14 years, you are not allowed to employ them. So all these put together, we'll call them as non-workers. We'll call them as non-workers. And that population in the age group of 15 to 59 years, that population which is willing to work in the age group of 15 to 59 years, will call it as a part of labor force. Now let's say there are 10 people, all the 10 people are willing to work. Out of 10 people, let's say 4 people will get a job and remaining 6 people will not get a job. So this population which is willing to work gets the job, it is called as employed. It is referred to as employed population. And the population which is willing to work but doesn't get the job, it is called as unemployed. It is referred to as unemployed. All of you okay with this? The population which is willing to work gets the work, gets the job. Of course, because they are working, they will also get salary. Right? That population is called as employed. The population which is willing to work but doesn't get a job, it is called as unemployed. Right? It is called as unemployed. And that population which is not willing to work, it is basically called as a non-workers. So I'll repeat the whole idea again. The whole population will be divided into two groups. One is called as a labor force. Second one is called as a non-workers. Labor force will consist of the population which is willing to work, and non-labor, non-workers consist of the population which is not willing to work. Right, sir? Any example of a population which is not willing to work? Pensioners, right? People who are put in jails, right? Children below the age of 14 years, people who will pursue higher education, etc., etc. Right, non-workers. And on the other side, we will divide this into the employed as well as non-employed population. Done. Now, whenever you talk about unemployment, there are different types of unemployment. Now, what are the different types of unemployment? Have a look at this. One is the frictional unemployment. Second one is basically structural type of unemployment. Third one is seasonal. Fourth one is cyclical. Let's go point by point here. One is frictional, second one is structural, third one is seasonal, fourth one is cyclical unemployment. Now, what is this frictional unemployment? Let's say hypothetically, a person is working in a company, and on the 1st of January, the person will quit the job. Person will leave the job, and let's say on the 1st of February, the person will join another company as an employee. So in this example, can I say for 30 days? In this example, can I say for 30 days, right? For 30 days, the person has remained unemployed. Let me know. In this example that I've written, for 30 days, person has remained unemployed. And what has happened? Person has shifted from one job to another job, and in the process of shifting from one job to another job, for certain time period, person remains unemployed. This is called as frictional. Please look at the definition. Right? That is called as frictional, right? A frictional unemployment. Second one is called as a structural unemployment. Now, I'll give you a very recent example. What if a software company or any manufacturing company will purchase or will start using artificial intelligence? They will start using artificial intelligence. That is, in simple terms, right, robo and technology. They'll start using robo and technology. Now, if the company will start using AI, will that reduce demand for certain people in the company? Will that make certain skill sets of the people useless, outdated now? Of course, yes. This was there in the newspaper, by the way. This was there in the newspaper. A couple of weeks ago, I've told you this. Right? So some of the software companies have started adopting AI tools now. They have started using more and more AI tools. And when the company will start using AI tools, some of the skill sets which are there with the people, that is some of the employees, they also have the same skill set. But the company says, let me use a technology. I will not use human labor, which also means some of the people will end up losing job. So can I say in this example, because of development of technology, I'll repeat the statement, because of development of a new type of a technology, some people, what skill sets they have, these skill sets are useless in the economy now. These skill sets are not necessary for the economy now. I'll call this as structural unemployment. I'll call this as a structural unemployment. All of you okay with this? Third one is seasonal unemployment. Seasonal unemployment. Now, what do you mean by seasonal unemployment? Let me ask you a very simple question. During harvesting season, imagine you own a piece of land. During harvesting season, you will have employment opportunity for me. Once harvesting season is over, will you provide a wage opportunity for me? Think of this. Right? Once the harvesting season is over, will you have any kind of wage opportunity for me? You'll say, no, I don't have it. Now, let's say harvesting season will come. Again, you will require my wage services. To harvest the crop, you will use my wage services or labor services. After harvesting season is over, again for certain time period, I will lose the employment opportunity. So all of you able to understand? From one season to the next season. From one season, that is, if one of the season is over, it will lead to unemployment creation. Right? For example, once the sowing season is over, done. I will not have any wage opportunity. I am unemployed. After harvesting is done, again, I don't have any employment opportunity. I'm unemployed. So when there is a change in the season like this, when there is a change in the season, the change in the season will lead to unemployment, hence called as seasonal unemployment. Hence called as a seasonal unemployment. And finally, cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment means what? Please tell me. During COVID, India fell into recession. All of you know this, right? During COVID, India fell into recession. So whenever a country falls into recession, depression, etc., can I say certain unemployment will be created? Certain people will lose the job. So whenever the health of the economy, health of the economy will deteriorate, will change like this, unemployment will be created. That I will refer to as cyclical unemployment. All of you okay with these types? In fact, in the context of India, earlier also we have discussed this. There is one more type of unemployment, disguised unemployment. Do you remember this? In the context of India, there is one more type of unemployment, disguised unemployment. In case of disguised unemployment, what is the idea? More than required number of labor is used to finish a certain work. More than required number of labor is used, and because you are requiring more than required number of units of labor, productivity does not change. The productivity doesn't change. Productivity still remains the same. In simple terms, instead of using 2 people, you're using, let's say, 3 people to do a job, which can be done only by 2 people. So productivity doesn't change, but the people who are engaged in the work are more than required number. That is called as a disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment. The best example of a disguised unemployment in India is agriculture sector. Agriculture sector is the best example of disguised unemployment. Can we go forward? Frictional, when you're shifting from one job to another job, frictional. Structural, when the employers will start using certain technology that will create unemployment, structural. Third one is seasonal, whenever you will shift from one season to another season because of the shift in the or change in the season, unemployment. And finally cyclical. Cyclical means when the health of the economy changes from growth, economy will fall into recession. So when the health of the economy changes, it will lead to creation of unemployment. That is called a cyclical. Now, before I go forward, many of you started saying, sir, because you're saying artificial intelligence, right? Structural, because you're saying artificial intelligence has led to certain unemployment. Can I make a conclusion? Technology always creates unemployment? Not necessarily. I hope you understand. Not necessarily. Not necessarily that technology always will create unemployment. Absolutely no. Let me prove it. There are two sides here. One side basically says, right, if you adopt artificial technology, artificial intelligence, robo, etc., that will lead to unemployment. That is one side of the argument. What is the other side of argument? Other side of argument is, imagine you are the owner of a company. You will purchase a robo, right? You will purchase a technology, which means, don't you think there is another company which has created employment, and those employees are providing services to you now? Yes or no? Please think of it. Right? You will purchase, let's say, artificial intelligence, but to run that particular machine, to run that artificial intelligence machine, there are software engineers who are sitting. There are certain people who are continuously ensuring that the machine is up, machine is operational, etc. So again, please understand, do not be under the assumption that AI will always create unemployment. Not necessarily. There will be generation of jobs on the other side also. But now there is a contention whether net outcome, whether as a result of all of this, whether there is a positive outcome in terms of additional jobs created, or there is a net loss of jobs. That you cannot decide now only, because in case of India right now, very few of the companies have started adopting technology. That you'll understand over a period of time. Done. So these are the four types of unemployment plus a disguised unemployment. Now, how do we measure it? How do we measure it? Generally, please understand this. Generally, whenever you talk about employment, unemployment, earlier there was one survey called as a EUS survey. I'll write it separately. Earlier, there was one survey, right, which is referred to as a EUS survey. Now, what is this EUS survey? EUS basically stands for employment, unemployment. Okay, employment, unemployment, unemployment survey. Okay, EUS survey. Earlier, I repeat, earlier we used to conduct employment as well as unemployment surveys. But there was a problem with employment as well as unemployment survey for a very simple reason. This was not conducted on periodical basis. This was not conducted very frequently. Generally, the argument was employment and unemployment survey was conducted once every 5 years for the whole of economy. Now you think of it, you want to create a policy. You want to create a policy where you want to promote employment, you want to generate certain jobs in the economy, you want to create a policy which represents the reality of employment situation in India. And on the other side, there is a survey which is being conducted once every 5 years. Don't you think the policies that you're trying to do or frame are based on sometimes outdated data? Let me know. Right, I'll repeat it again. Please understand this. EUS, employment unemployment surveys, was conducted once every 5 years. Now you want to make a policy. Right, let's say hypothetically the last time employment unemployment survey was conducted, for which data is available, was for 2011 and 2012. After that we conducted for 16 and 17, but the data was not published. Now let's say in 2020 you want to frame a policy. You want to frame a policy, but you're using the data from the survey which was conducted in 16 and 17. Are you not using outdated data? Which also means you do not have the realistic assessment. You do not know what is the assessment of the employment situation in the current year. Right? Citing this, what Government of India has done is it has discontinued. It doesn't conduct employment unemployment surveys now. Rather, we have a new type of survey, periodic labor force survey. Periodic labor force survey. If you are reading newspapers regularly, please tell me, last month was there a discussion regarding periodic labor force survey? PLFS. In short, this is called as PLFS. Last month itself, was there a discussion in the newspaper regarding PLFS? It was there, by the way. Now, if you're going to ask me, sir, should we remember the data which was published by PLFS? Absolutely no. These are the important points. Periodic labor force survey is conducted by NSSO. NSSO, National Sample Survey Organization. Sorry, National Sample Survey Office. NSSO stands for National Sample Survey Office. Okay, NSSO. Now, NSSO conducts periodic labor force survey once every 3 months. Once every 3 months means for every quarter. Simple. For every quarter, they will publish a data. And right, annually also, they will conduct a survey. Annually also, they will conduct a survey. And once every quarter also, they will conduct a survey. So, NSSO, National Sample Survey Office, once every quarter, for every quarter they'll publish a data, and annually also they will publish a data. And this is basically the concept which is used now, so that on annual basis, on quarterly basis, there is an assessment of how much is the employment, how much is the unemployment, etc., etc. Now generally when the data is collected, right, many of you will ask me, so how data is collected? they will use a concept called as usual principal status, UPS, usual principal status. Now, what is this concept of a usual principal status? In case of usual principal status, right, what they do is they will go to certain people. It's a sampling method. Before I tell you, there's a concept of sampling method. It is a sampling method, right? Sampling, and the second one is census, right? What do you mean by census? The data will be collected. The data will be collected by going to all the houses. Have you come across the term population census? Population census? Yes or no? Right? The data is collected by going to every household. Right? Population census. They will have to collect the data from every household. Right? That is census. But for sampling methodology, right? They will not go to every household. Within certain region, they will identify certain people and they will collect the data from them, and they will simply expand the data for the whole of the region as such. Sample means what? I'll give a very simple example. Imagine you have gone to a sweet shop. You will ask for a sample. Do you think when you ask for a sample, they will give you 1 kg of sweet for sampling? They'll give you 1 kg of sweets for sampling? No, they will simply give you a small piece like this, right? Ask you to find out whether it is as per your taste or not. Apply the same logic. Apply the same logic. So we will go for a sampling, right? And we will identify certain sample size. We'll collect the data from sample size, and we will elaborate. We'll extrapolate the result to apply for rest of the region as such. This is how sampling is done. In fact, many of you will have this kind of a doubt also. Can government of India get the data directly from many agencies? Any agency from where government can get the data, how many employed, etc., etc. The problem in case of India is you can get certain data. For example, you can see how many bank accounts have been opened for the employed people. Correct? Can that give you certain data? How many companies are there? How many bank accounts they opened for their employees? How many government employees are there? That will give you certain data regarding how many jobs have been created. But please tell me, do you think in India, all the people who have a job will have a bank account? Will they have a new bank account created? Always? Not necessarily. Why? Large part of Indian economy, it is informal in nature. Informal means people are employed. Salaries or wages are given in cash. Salaries or wages are given in cash. So what will you do at that particular point of time? What will you do in that situation? So that is the precise reason it's not possible for us to find out how many jobs are getting created only looking at the bank accounts, or only looking at the subscribers into NPS or pension accounts, etc. It's not possible. That doesn't give you a clear picture. That is the precise reason we will go for a sampling method. Right? Sampling is actually conducted by NSSO. Sample surveys are conducted, and they will find out in a quarter how many are employed, how many are not employed, and in that context, generally, how do they collect the data? How do they collect the data? Different types of methods they will use. For example, there is a process called as usual principal status, UPS. Usual principal status, UPS. What is this usual principal status? Imagine you're one of the person in a sample. You're one of the person. I will come to you and I'll simply ask you a question. Were you employed? Were you employed for at least 183 days in the last 1 year? All of you okay with this? Were you employed for at least 183 days in the last 1 year? Right? So if you say yes, you'll be considered as employed. If you say no, you'll be considered as unemployed. So there are different ways. There is a UPS, current daily status is there, current weekly status is there. So there are different processes which are used to find out whether the person is employed, unemployed. Now, once the data is collected, how do we basically use the data? Once the data is collected, how do we use this data? How do we use all of this data to find out what is employment rate, what is unemployment rate, etc., etc.? These are the four ratios. Out of these four ratios, for UPSC exam, as far as I'm concerned, second one will be the most important one for you. If you're reading newspaper, most of the times you'll come across the second one itself, unemployment rate or unemployment ratio. But before I talk about unemployment rate or unemployment ratio, what is labor force participation rate? What is worker population ratio? What is a proportion unemployed ratio? Let's start. Labor force participation rate simply measures how much percentage of the total population, I repeat, how much percentage of the total population is willing to work. I'll repeat the statement. What does labor force participation rate tell you? It tells you how much of the total population, how much percentage of the total population is willing to work, That is labor force participation rate. And the formula is very simple. LFPR is equal to total population, which is part of the labor force, divided by that total population into 100. And that is labor force participation rate. Now, having looked at labor force participation rate, please look at formula number 3 and formula number 4, because all of them are connected. Look at formula number 3 as well as formula number 4. The third one is worker population ratio and the fourth one is proportion unemployed. Now, please do let me know, can I say labor force consists of population which is employed plus unemployed? Let me know. Right, I'm talking about the first formula. Labor force consists of population which is employed plus population which is unemployed. Now, can I use the formula 1 to derive formula number 3 as well as 4? Let me know. Can I use formula number 1 to derive formula number 3 as well as formula number 4? Anybody has a problem? It's a simple application of CSAT. Simple application of CSAT. That is, if you remember the formula, if it is A plus B divided by C, I can write it as A divided by C as well as a B divided by C. Correct? Right? Basic formula, right? CSAT concept. So third one is worker population ratio. Fourth one is proportion unemployed. Now, what is the use of it? Why should we calculate worker population ratio also? Why should we calculate proportion unemployed also? The reason is simple. You want to find out how many people out of total population, of course, how many people out of total population are willing to work. That is the first formula. How many of them are willing to work? And out of this, you are trying to find out how many are actually able to get the jobs, how many are unable to get the jobs. But please let me know, do you think the total population is the right reference point to find out unemployment rate in India? Think of it. Do you think the total population is the right reference point to find out how many of them do not have the job as a percentage? Answer is no. You should not use that as a reference point. A better reference point is not the total population, rather labor force itself. Right? Why? In case of total population, are you not including children as well? Correct? But are you allowed to provide job opportunities for the children? If you employ them, it's a criminal offense. They will catch hold of you. Right? There are population, or there is a certain population which has decided, I don't want to work, I want to pursue a higher education, but you're including that as well. There is certain population which has decided, I've worked for last 40 years, I don't want to work anymore, so I don't want to even search for a job, I'm not willing to work. You're including that population as well. So rather than using total population to measure, right, how many people are getting jobs, how many are not getting jobs, a better reference point will be labor force, because in the labor force everybody is willing to work. In the labor force, everybody is willing to work. Whether you get a job or don't get a job, that's a different question. But within the labor force, everybody is willing to work in the age group of 15 to 59 years. That is the reason the most important rate or ratio for you will be the second one, unemployment rate. And what do we do in unemployment rate? How many people who are searching for jobs have no jobs, divided by how many people are willing to work. how many people are willing to work, that will be a reference point. Out of that, how many are not able to get the job, that will be the unemployment rate for you. That will be the unemployment rate, right? So that is the reason every time you read about unemployment rate in the newspaper, they're not talking about overall population in India. They're not talking about overall population. They're simply saying between 15 to 59 years, how many are willing to work. But out of these, how many do not have the jobs? How many of the people do not get the jobs? In fact, there is one more way, technical way, how they will put this unemployment rate. They will say unemployment rate refers to that part of the that part of the labor force whose skill sets are of no use for the economy right now. I'll repeat the statement. Let me know, look at the formula and let me know whether it makes sense to you or not. Unemployment rate or unemployment ratio is that part of the labor force whose skill sets are of no use to the economy right now. Right? Over a period of time, you might get a job. Right? After 1 year, after 3 months, after 6 months, you might get a job. But right now, economy has no use for your skill sets. Right? Maybe after some time, you might get a job. From unemployed, you might shift to employed population. Right? So these are the 4 ratios. Can we go forward now? These are the 4 ratios. Can we go forward? Right? So in case of India, labor force participation rate is higher. It is higher. Right? But unemployment rate in recent times also has started increasing. That is a cause of concern. That's a cause of concern. Now, in context of India, I'll talk only in the context of India. There is this argument, right? There is an argument also. There is a counter argument also. There is this argument that there is a jobless growth happening in India. I'll repeat the statement. In the context of India, there is an argument that in the last 2 decades, India has been experiencing a situation called as a jobless growth phenomenon. Now, what is this concept of a jobless growth phenomenon? Let me explain it. Jobless growth simply means it is a situation wherein economy experiences very high GDP growth rate, but very negligible employment growth rate. I'll repeat the statement. It is a situation wherein economy experiences very high GDP growth rate, very good GDP growth rate, but very less, very negligible employment growth rate. For example, please tell me, if GDP will increase by let's say 7%, employment growth rate is 0.5%. Can I call this as a jobless growth phenomenon? Yes or no? If the GDP growth rate is 7%, that is from last year to this year, your GDP value has increased by 7%. But the employment growth rate means between last year to this year, number of jobs created have increased by 0.5%. Can I say it's a situation where GDP growth rate is very high, but the employment growth rate is very low? Such a situation is called as a jobless growth phenomenon. Jobless growth phenomenon. And there is an argument that in the context of India, we are experiencing jobless growth. Right? There is a contention. There is an argument from certain sections of the economists saying that, yes, we are experiencing jobless growth phenomenon. How, sir? How can you say there is a jobless growth phenomenon, etc.? Let me prove it to you. There is a term called as employment elasticity. All of them are connected. There's a term called as employment elasticity. What is this employment elasticity? Employment elasticity measures as a result of GDP, how much percentage jobs have been created in a country. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement again. What is employment elasticity? As a result of change in the GDP, how many changes in the jobs, how many new jobs have been created. That is called as a employment elasticity. And many of you ask me, sir, what is a connection? Is there any connection between GDP and employment? Of course, yes. If GDP increases, It means production is increasing. Correct? Overall in the economy, production is also increasing. And when the production increases, don't you think employment should also start increasing? Employment should also start increasing. It makes perfect sense. Right? So argument is, with the change in the GDP, how much percentage change has been observed in the employment? That is called as a employment elasticity. Employment elasticity. Now, please think of it and do let me know. Would you prefer a higher employment elasticity or a lower employment elasticity? Think of it. Would you prefer a higher employment elasticity or lower employment elasticity? What is your preference? You should always prefer to have a higher employment elasticity. Some of you are saying lower, exactly opposite. You should prefer a higher employment elasticity. Why? My dear, higher employment elasticity, does it not mean more and more jobs are getting created in Indian economy? Just think of it. So number, give me number, etc. Even if I don't give number, you think of it. Right? Numerator is growth rate in employment. That is how much percentage, how many new jobs have been created, growth rate in the employment, divided by growth rate in GDP. Don't you think if you have a lower employment elasticity, if you have lower employment elasticity, it simply means a denominator is very bigger, numerator is very small. Yes or no? Arey Baba, I'm simply using CSAT concept. High school level mathematics I'm talking about. If employment elasticity is low, it means the denominator is very big, numerator is very small. You want to create a very less new jobs. Should that be your argument? No. Your argument should be, in case of India, people who are searching for jobs are very large. More and more people annually will keep searching for jobs in India, which means we'll have to create more and more jobs. And if you're going to create more and more jobs, employment elasticity should start increasing. Employment elasticity should be higher than. But what is the situation? What is the situation in case of India? In the last two and a half decades, employment elasticity has become a half. Employment elasticity in case of India has actually fallen down in India. It has actually reduced in India. In 1990s, employment elasticity was somewhere around 0.4, means 1% growth rate, 0.4% employment growth rate. But very recently, the employment elasticity, rather than increasing, has actually fallen down. It is somewhere around 0.2. It is somewhere around 0.2, which means in 1990s, 1% growth rate led to, right, a 0.4% employment growth rate. But now 1% growth rate will lead to 0.2% employment growth rate. Why it is happening, I'll explain it. Don't worry. Why it is happening, I'll explain it. But all of you okay with this argument? Which means growth rate is there. Growth rate is there in India, but employment growth rate is very low. Can I call this as the concept of jobless growth phenomenon? Can I call this situation as jobless growth phenomenon? Your GDP is experiencing a very good growth. That's a fact, by the way. 5%, 6%, 7%. But if your employment elasticity is 0.2, means if you're achieving a 5% GDP growth rate, if you're achieving 5% GDP growth rate, 0.2 elasticity means your employment growth rate is 1%. Right? Your employment growth rate is 1%. And back in 1990s, if 5% GDP growth rate was experienced, employment growth rate was 2%, almost double than what it is today. Right? So that is the reason they're saying it's a fact that GDP growth rate is higher in India, especially in the last 2 decades. But at the same point of time, employment growth rate has been very low. Hence, they are calling this as a phase of jobless growth phenomenon. Jobless growth phenomenon. And please tell me, some of you will be thinking why it is happening. I'll explain that, don't worry. But don't you think if India will continue to experience jobless growth phenomenon, it is very difficult to achieve inclusive growth? Yes or no? It is very difficult to achieve inclusive growth in India. Very, very difficult to achieve that. Right? So we will have to start increasing the employment elasticity also. We'll have to increase employment elasticity so that no doubt we will experience a good growth rate. Along with that, more and more jobs will get generated in India. Now, coming to your question, sir, why? Why is that employment elasticity in case of India has fallen down? What are the reasons behind it? The first very important reason, skilled labor availability in India is very, very low. I'll explain that. There's a slide for this, I'll explain. Skilled labor availability in India is very low. As per economic survey, I repeat, as per economic survey, only around 11 to 12% of the working population has got any kind of skill set. Right? Only around 11 to 12% of the working population has got any kind of skill set. Whereas in other countries, that number is more than 20% in China, more than 50% in many countries, more than 70% in many countries, which means the people who are there in the working age group, the people, more and more number, they have got skill sets compared to Indian economy. Right? So we need to address that. Second issue, why there's a jobless growth phenomenon in India is most of the contribution to GDP comes from services sector. I repeat, most of the GDP, or let's say higher than 50% of the GDP contribution comes from services sector. And comparatively, please remember this, manufacturing can create more jobs compared to services sector. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. More than 50% contribution comes from services sector. Compared between manufacturing and services, manufacturing has the potential to create more jobs. That is a problem in India. Third concern, lot of investments in India have become capital intensive. Lot of investments in India have become capital intensive. Capital intensive. Please do let me know in earlier sessions, right? I believe around a week ago, did we not discuss what is labor intensive and capital intensive? I gave you example of diamond sector, that is a labor intensive sector. Textile sector, that is a labor intensive sector. On the other side, let's say steel manufacturing, power sector, all these are capital intensive. So historically, in the last 1.5 or 2.5 decades, what has been seen is investment has increased, but a large part of this investment has gone into the sector which is capital intensive, which means investment is higher, production is higher, but the job generation, employment generation is not very high because it is investment intensive, not labor intensive. And finally, one more reason why this situation of employment is a problem in India. The reason is labor laws. Labor laws are a problem in India. Why? Please understand, large number of these labor laws were formulated at a time when the situation of Indian economy was completely different. Indian economy was at a completely different situation, and at that point of time these labor laws were made. 1960s, 1950s, 1970s. But today the situation of India, that is Indian economy, is completely different. That is, can I say, before 1991 most of the industries were covered through government enterprises, and now a lot of these industries private sector is present. Not only domestic private sector, but also foreign private sector. Now, whenever you talk about private sector, they would always like flexible labor laws. I'll repeat the statement. Whenever you talk about private sector, they always prefer flexible labor laws, not rigid, not strict labor laws. For example, private sector wants, whenever they want to hire, they should be allowed to hire people. And whenever they want to fire, they should be allowed to fire people. But in case of India, this kind of a easy hiring easy firing policy is not allowed. This kind of a easy hiring and firing policy is not allowed. Why? There are different laws under which these companies will have to approach government, take permission, and then remove the people. So easy hiring and hiring and firing policy, it's not available for many of these private sector companies. And if you are the owner of the private sector company, if easy hiring and firing is not allowed, right? It is not allowed as per the law. You'll have to take permission for all of it. Don't you think you would prefer to invest in machines rather than investing in people? Yes or no? Will you not hire more and more contract to workers rather than hiring full-time workers? Do you understand the term contract workers? Freelancers, gig workers. Because if you hire a full-time worker, think of it, if you hire a full-time worker, you'll have to pay salary, you'll have to provide certain hidden benefits also. What do you mean by hidden benefits? Paid leaves are there, right? Paid leaves are there. That is EL, earned leaves are there, right? If you are a pregnant woman, then again 6+ months they will have to give you paid leaves, right? ESI contribution, EPF contribution. There are so many hidden benefits that a full-time worker will get. So company says rather hiring a full-time worker and right taking care of all of these expenses, which is a burden for me, why not hire a freelancer? Why not hire a gig worker? I'll simply hire a gig worker. Best example of a gig worker is, right, I'm pretty sure all of you either one or the other time would have ordered something on the Flipkart, Amazon, right, or Swiggy, Zomato, whatever it is you want to call it as. So I hope you understand there are certain people, delivery partners who will come to your home, right, provide something to you and travel and go away. These are nothing but the example of gig workers only, right? So rather than hiring full-time workers, the companies will end up hiring gig workers or right freelancers like this, so that the burden is not high for them. They can easily fire them, remove them whenever they don't want to provide them work, etc. So labor laws are also very strict in India. These are very, very strict, stringent labor laws. But the criticism is that these labor laws were formulated back in a time when the situation of Indian economy is completely different compared to what it is today. And that is the precise reason government of India has taken around 30 plus labor laws and has compressed all of them, right? Put them all together into only 4 labor codes. I'll repeat the statement. Government of India has taken 30 plus labor laws and right put all of them together and formulated only 4 labor codes. Now, should you read everything about 4 labor codes? Absolutely not required. Why? All of you know next year elections are there, and during elections these kind of reforms which will have a longer impact on the economy are generally not implemented by the government. In fact, these labor laws were formed by the government around 3 years ago. Around 3 years ago, Government of India decided let's implement the labor laws. Even today, not even one of them have been implemented by the state governments. Not even one of them. And I don't expect they will implement in the next 2 to 3 years. I don't expect that will happen in India. Right. So, anyways, labor laws are also very strict, very stringent in India. So, can I say because of all of these reasons, no doubt we are experiencing high GDP growth, but the employment growth rate is very small. And that situation is called as a jobless growth situation. Everybody's okay? That situation is referred to as jobless growth situation. That is what is being attributed to Indian economy now. Now, I've discussed all of these as a part of jobless growth. Now, please tell me, can I write the same things as labor issues in India? Most of you have become dormant now, phased out. Right? So, can I say same thing is nothing but labor market issues in India? Skilled labor is not available. Right? Investment is more of a capital intensive rather than labor intensive. Right? Labor laws are very strict in India, very stringent in India. right? Majority of the contribution comes from the services sector, but comparatively, manufacturing has the potential to generate more and more jobs. All these are labor issues. In addition to this, let me give you certain more labor issues. Next one is, lot of working population in India is present in the agriculture sector. A large part of working population in India is present in the agriculture sector. It is present in the agriculture sector. That's a fact, by the way. That is somewhere around 49%. Somewhere around 49% of the working age population in India, or the working population in India, is present in the agriculture sector. But on the other hand, the contribution of agriculture sector to GDP comes somewhere around 17 to 18%. Now, please tell me, is it not a problem? Is it not a problem that you account for almost, underline the term, almost half of the working population, but on the other side, contribution wise, it is just around one sixth? There is a huge disparity in the agriculture sector in terms of how much labor is present and how much is the contribution. This is also a problem. This is also a problem. We'll have to shift this working population from agriculture sector to other sector, for example, industrial sectors. For example, we'll have to shift this into industrial sectors. And that is the precise reason now government of India has launched various skilling initiatives where skilling will be provided to the people and they'll be absorbed in the market. Right? So skilling initiatives are being promoted, manufacturing sector schemes are being promoted, service sector schemes are being promoted, etc. Right? So another labor market issue is large part of working population is present in the agriculture sector. Skilled population in India, that is how much of the labor is actually skilled in India. As per economic survey, only around 11 to 12%, only around 11 to 12% of the labor is skilled, and remaining working population in India doesn't have any access to skill set. Whereas if you look at other countries, right, it is 24% in China, 52% in USA, 68% in UK, 75% in Germany, 80% in Japan, 96% in South Korea, which means in other countries, large chunk of working population is skilled. In India, we are lagging behind it. We're actually falling behind. And this is one of the constraints related to why many of the schemes, many of the initiatives of government of India are not taking off, are not becoming successful in India. This is one of the very important constraints. And in order to address this particular issue, right, in order to ensure that labor is skilled, it is available, etc., Government of India, I'll come back to this. Government of India has launched a Skill India initiative. Government has launched a Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, etc. Under the Skill India initiative, which was launched by the government back in the year 2015, the target is to provide skilling to 40 crore people. We want to provide the skilling to at least 40 crore people in India, so that they will have the requisite skill set. They'll be absorbed in the market. They'll be absorbed in the market much easier. Under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, PMKVY, under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, which is being implemented by Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, MSDE, Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. Again, the argument is simple. If some of the people already have skill set, we will provide them with a certificate, right? I hope you understand this. There is a concept called as a recognition of prior learning. Recognition of prior learning, meaning what? Have you seen certain people without any certification, they already have acquired certain skill sets? Yes or no? In the day-to-day market, in the day-to-day events that you're seeing, whether you have gone to a puncture shop, whether you have gone to, let's say, a tailor shop, etc., people, they don't have any formal vocation, they do not have any formal certificate, etc., but they have learned the skill set already, right? That concept is called as a recognition of prior learning, RPL, recognition of prior learning. Under RPL, People who are already having skill set but they do not have any certificate, those kind of people will be tested and certification will be issued. And other people, we will provide them with the training and then right conduct a test and give them a certificate. So actual certification, that is a skilling and a certification is also done. And if you're already having the skill set, you will be identified under recognition of prior learning and a certificate will be issued. That is basically the concept of Pradhana Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana. But in the context of India, right, I'll tell you one more point here. In the context of India, there is one issue. What is the issue? Imagine, okay, you are a company and I'm the government. I will identify certain people, provide them with the skill set. Can I say there is one problem, that is what skill set I've provided to the people now will be different from what skill sets you actually require as a company? Think of it. Right? I'll repeat it again. You are the owner of a company and I'm the government. I've provided training to certain people and I've given a certificate also. So they have certain skill set. But is it possible that what skill set I've provided to the people is a different compared to what skill set you require? This is called as skill gap. This is called as a skills gap. Skill gap. Skill gap is also a very big problem. Right? Earlier, what used to happen? Understand this. That's the reason this was one question asked many years ago, and I believe around 4 to 5 years ago. The statement said, it was in the GS paper 3. Statement said, the labor in India is supply driven rather than being demand driven. I'll repeat the statement and listen to me carefully. Labor in India is a supply driven rather than being demand driven. Meaning what? I have certain right courses. I have already created certain curriculum. I will train people. I will give them certificate. Now they will come to the market, search for the job. But what if the kind of training I've provided is not the same thing that the market actually requires? Labor is there. People are searching for the job. It's not that they don't have any skill set. They have skill set. But because of the skill gap, they might have a certificate, but even after that, they will not end up getting any jobs in the market. So this, can I say, it is nothing but labor is supply driven rather than being demand driven. Correct? Can I call this as labor is supply driven rather than being demand driven? Now you will ask me, sir, how can you shift to the demand driven concept then? Right? Supply driven is a very wrong approach. How can we shift to the demand driven model then? Government of India is doing it now. Under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, very recently they have launched a PMKVY 3.0. PMKVY 3.0, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana 3.0 has been launched. Have a look at this. PMKVY 3.0 is being implemented across the country since January 2021. Now, what is the importance of this PMKVY 3.0? Under PMKVY 3.0, government says now, at district level, there will be certain panels set up, and these panels will study what kind of skilled level jobs are available in the district. Right? Let's say in your district, we will set up a commission, and that commission will study what kind of companies are there. If these companies are there, what kind of jobs do they create? And if they're creating these kind of jobs, what kind of skilling we should provide, what kind of training we should provide to the people. And we will provide training accordingly. Now, don't you think because we have provided the training, those people who have got trained with me will have the same skill sets that you are demanding? They will have the same training given, right, according to what you are demanding in the market. You want to hire a person who can operate one particular machine. I would have trained people who are efficient in terms of training that operating in that particular machine. Right. So now under the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, can I say labor is a demand driven rather than being supply driven? Please do let me know. Can I say now under PMKVY, labor is a demand driven rather than being supply driven? That is, I'm not blindly providing training now. First, I will find out what kind of skills are required in a district. Based on that, I'll create a training program. I will provide a training. I will give them a certificate. Now, basically, they'll be easily absorbed in the market. Right? They will be easily absorbed in the market. Okay, done. So, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is there. Skill India is there. Apprenticeship program is there. Apprenticeship is nothing but training. Training. Some of the people will work in a company for a certain number of months or a certain number of weeks, and for that, right, these are called as a trainees or apprentices. Government is also promoting apprenticeship program. Companies should hire them only for training purposes, and during the training, right, government will ensure that certain amount will be paid to the trainees, and after they are trained, if the company wants, they can retain them as a full-time employees. Right. So apprenticeship program is there. In fact, the government is also promoting a concept of job mela. Government is conducting lot of job melas now. Job melas means, right, the employers as well as the employee. Many companies will go to this mela and will provide a test, will conduct interviews, etc., and provide job opportunities, employment opportunities to the people who have come to the job mela. So job melas are there, apprenticeship program is there, right? A Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana is there, Skill India initiative is there, right? So many initiatives are being undertaken by the government. Now, some of you are asking, so should we remember all of this data? Should we remember all of this data? Answer is no. Why? I have taken this data from this year's economic survey. Right, in the month of February, the government published economic survey. I've taken the table from this year's economic survey. Next year, I'm pretty sure data would have changed. So do not by heart this data. UPSC will not ask you outdated data like this. Done now? All of you okay with this issue? That is one more issue is skilling issue itself. Another issue is female LFPR is declining in India. Female LFPR, female labor force participation rate, is actually declining in India, and that is a cause of concern. Cause of concern. Why? When you make a comparison in population, right? Population comparison, female population is around 45% of total India's population. Okay, female population, right? Around 45%. I'm rounding off the number, by the way. Around 45% of total population. But when you talk about, right, participation of female in the economic activity in recent times, the willingness of the female population to participate in the labor market, searching for the jobs, has started decreasing. It has started decreasing. Look at the data. There has been a decline in the female LFPR from 30.27% in 1990 to 20.8% back in the year 2019, as per World Bank report. Which means back in 1990, out of every 100 women, 30 women were willing to work. But by 2019, this has fallen down from 30 to around 20 women. Only around 20 women are willing to work. That is a declining female, right? Declining female labor force participation rate. Why? Why it has started declining? The government of India in the economic survey has cited certain reasons. One, lot of families in India in India are worried about safety or security of the females or female workers, and as a result of right, worried nature of their safety and security, they will ask them not to work. Right? You tell me whether this is correct or not. Have you seen such examples in the society, etc.? Right? Whether you have seen it in your own households or not doesn't matter. or at least in the society, right? Being worried about safety or security of the women, the house itself will decide, don't go for a job, leave it then. That is one. Second one is, lot of women are pursuing higher studies now. That is good, by the way. Okay, a lot of them are pursuing higher studies. They want to go to foreign universities. They want to have a master's degree. So they will say, I don't want to work. I'm not willing to work. That is the second reason. Third reason, especially in households, it has been found that urban households, it has been found that whenever a child is born, or whenever the parents, right, husband's parents, by the way, become old, it becomes the duty of the wife to take care of them. By default, it becomes the duty of the wife to take care of them. And because, right, because it becomes a duty to take care of the child as well as aged parents, and don't you think in many of the households they'll come to a conclusion, no need to work then? Yes, right? At least all of you will agree with me. Anybody wants to counter me? But again, please understand, don't take an isolated incident and argue that that is a norm. Correct or not? Don't take an isolated incident. Sir, मेरे घर में ऐसा नहीं होता है. Right? My home, it doesn't happen. Very good. But it is not a norm. It can be an isolated incident. It is not a norm in India. Right? So because of all of these reasons, it has been found that female participation in the labor force has actually started decreasing. Should it decrease? No, it should not decrease. Female labor force participation should be higher. More female labor should be absorbed in the market. That will promote gender empowerment. That will promote gender equality. That will reduce the gender gaps, right? Whatever gaps is there in wages, in income, etc., that will reduce. But that is not happening in India. In fact, all of you heard of the work that was done by the Nobel laureate, this year's economics Nobel laureate, Goldin. All of you have read about it, right? Goldin, Claudia Goldin. And in fact, she writes that one of the advantages that has helped women to get into labor market is the pregnancy pills. Right, the pregnancy pills. Otherwise, the women were forced to bore the child, and if they are forced to bore the child, then for many months they'll be out of the labor market. And if they are out of the labor market, that's it. Right, it is very difficult for them to come back and start working all over again. Right. In fact, she also said industrialization has been one of the problems why labor participation from women has actually come down. Industrialization has actually led to reduction in the labor participation of the women. Why? When industrialization did take place, it was assumed that the kind of jobs which are available, the work that is required will be physical labor work. And because that is a physical labor work, it was assumed that the female workers are not rightly suited, male workers are rightly suited. And that is the reason there is a curve, a bell curve like this, U-shaped curve that she has explained. Right, it will decline, and again with the introduction of contraceptives, etc., the curve is lifting up like this. Anyways, right. So these are some of the labor issues. Why female labor force participation is also declining, but it should not decrease. It should start increasing. Done. So these are some of the issues. What kind of reforms have been undertaken by the government in the labor market, which are connected to labor market? Startup India initiative, Make in India initiative. Labor laws are being rationalized now. For example, I said central government has taken 30 labor laws. It has merged these labor laws into 4 labor codes. The state governments such as the Tamil Nadu government, Karnataka government, Rajasthan government, many of these state governments also have amended their labor laws in order to attract investments. Micro, small and medium enterprises reforms. Right? Many of you ask me how MSME reforms are connected to labor market. My dear, MSME sector is very closely connected to the number of jobs generated in India. It is one of the very important sectors which has generated a lot of jobs. So whatever reforms are implemented to stabilize MSME sector automatically will be having an impact on the labor market situation in India. In fact, in today's business line, right? I don't know how many of you have read this. In today's business line, there was an article regarding MSME index. Anybody has read this? Right, MSME index. In today's business line, there was right an article regarding MSME index. This is the first time an MSME index has been launched in India. I'll just write it. I'll write it here. All of you remember the name of development bank in India, SIDBI? Let me know. All of you remember a development bank by the name of SIDBI? Sir, where SIDBI you have discussed, my dear MSME sector. Reforms in MSME sector, right? A lot of these reforms are associated with SIDBI only. For example, what is that? That Yojana is there. No, I'm unable to recall. Mudra Yojana. Mudra Yojana. Right? Mudra Yojana has been launched by SIDBI only. So SIDBI, along with a company by the name of Jokata, they have launched an MSME index, right? A Sampurna. Okay, Sampurna index. Please remember this. It was there in today's newspaper. Right? Business line. Sampurna is a new type of index which will measure how MSME sector is performing. Right? Suddenly UPC can pick up all of these kind of questions. Please be very careful. So MSME reforms are important. And finally, Skill India. We have already discussed this. Skill India initiative is also important in terms of ensuring labor, right? In labor market, right, skilled labor is available. Done? Any problem here? Can we go forward? Anybody has any kind of issues? Can we go forward? Nobody's answering. Any kind of issues? Can we go forward? Okay. Now, skilling reform right now, we have right, a Skill India initiative. We have Kaushal Vikas Yojana. We have apprentices, etc., under which argument is simple. Different schemes. Right? Argument is we'll identify the people who do not have any skill set. We'll provide them with skilling. We'll provide them with a certificate, so that you can hold the certificate, get absorbed in the market. Okay. Earlier I said, in case of India, earlier most of the schemes were simply formulated skilling schemes, and later it was expected that the market will absorb the labor. But it was basically the problem wherein the market required certain different skilling, and government ended up providing a different skilling. And that is the reason under Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, now government will first conduct a survey of the district, where they will find out what kind of skilling is required, provide training in only those skill set, give them certificates, so that now they'll be easily absorbed. So under the PMKVY, we have shifted to a concept of the demand driven labor. What is a double E? Double E basically stands for employment elasticity. Employment elasticity. Employment elasticity measures how productive is your growth. How productive is your growth in the GDP in terms of creation of jobs. Is there any difference between reforms and capacity building schemes? Generally, in case of reforms, it is a very generic term. It is very generic term. It can be referred to anything. Right? For example, Make in India is a reform. Right? Skill India is a reform. Right? Reform is a very common term. Capacity building generally talks about skilling the people, skilling the labor, providing technology to the labor. That is called as capacity building. You left one slide in skilling. Which slide? Which slide have I left? Let me see. Which slide? On every slide I have written something. Tell me which slide I have left out. I've discussed everything. Okay. Okay. Reforms undertaken. Done. Let me go forward now. Gig economy. Right? Gig economy. Right? Let me have a discussion regarding gig economy now. Right? What do you mean by gig worker? What do you mean by gig economy? A gig worker is basically a type of worker where there is a non-standard work arrangement with the employers. I'll explain it. Listen carefully. It is a type of, or he's or she is a type of an employee who does not have a standard agreement of employment with an employer. Now you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by a standard agreement here? Whenever you become a part of a company, whenever you join any company, before you join a company, right, have you come across an agreement document? That is right, they will basically give you a document, 8-page document or a 10-page document, ask you to read the document carefully and sign on the document. And if you have seen the document very carefully, they will say you will have 5 working days in a month. Your salary, that is a cost to company, right? Understand this. They will say cost to company, CTC. Very, very famous. Those who are searching for a job, those who are working, etc. The key term is CTC, cost to company. Right? What is the cost to company? And if your cost to company is, let's say, 12 lakh rupees, right? The agreement will also state that out of this, certain income tax will be withheld and given to government. Your contributions to EPF will be withheld and given to government, etc. Right? You will have to work 9 hours a day. You will have so many number of paid leaves, that is earned leaves. Right? The in case of any violation, this is how you will be penalized, etc., etc. But in the context of a gig worker, such type of a contract, such type of an agreement doesn't exist. Is it okay? In the context of a gig worker, such type of an agreement doesn't exist. For example, all of us seen Ola cab drivers and Ola auto drivers. Yes, you must have used them. Used in the sense the services, or you must have seen in your cities, right, etc. Now, please tell me, if I become a Ola cab driver, is there a compulsion on me to work 9 hours every day? Think of it. Is there a compulsion on me to work 5 days in a week? Will the company provide me with paid leaves? Will the company provide me with a guaranteed, right, let's say salary every month? Absolutely no. I hope you understand. Absolutely no. It is on work basis. It is based on how much work I've done. I'm not a full-time employee. It is based on the amount of work that I'm doing. For example, if I provide, let's say, 2 travel services, that is, I've carried 2 passengers. I'm sorry, two, let's say, bookings rather than passengers, bookings. You have taken 2 bookings, 3 bookings, 4 bookings, 10 bookings. Based on that, I'll be paid certain amount of money. If I am, let's say, a delivery partner in Zomato, how many deliveries I will do, based on that, certain amount will be paid to me. So I hope you understand the argument. In case of a gig worker, there is no standard employee and employer contract which generally exists in a full-time working situation. Right? Such a worker is called as a gig worker. Right? If you want to understand a freelancer, I'm pretty sure you must have come across many freelancers. Right? They'll simply say, I don't work for one company, I'm a freelancer. Today I will work for this company. After 1 week, I'll work for that. After 1 month, I will work for this another software company. That is a concept of a gig work. Gig work. There is no standard employee employer contract. Right? As per the government of India, a gig worker is a person who performs work or participates in a work arrangement and earns from such activities outside the traditional employee employer relationship. Done. So this is the concept of a gig worker. Right? This is a definition of a gig worker. Now, why there is a boom for the gig economy in India? Why there's a growth of gig economy in India? Point number 1, gig workers, they will have a lot of flexibilities in terms of for whom they want to work, for how much time they want to work, if they want to work or not, etc. That kind of flexibility is always there in the gig economy. Right? For example, you must have heard of certain people who will keep on saying, I am my own boss. Correct? I am my own boss. I will decide what work I want to do. I will decide to whom I want to provide my services to. I will decide when I want to work, in which month I want to work. Next month is December. I want to take complete 1 month off. I don't want to work for anybody. That is possible if you're a gig worker. It is not possible if you're a full-time worker. Right? So provides flexibility for both employer and the employee. How employer will get the flexibility? My dear, if you're an employer, right? Let's say if you're an employer and I am one of your employees, next month, right? I'll say I have got, right? You will say you don't have any work to allocate to me, but you will have to pay me salary. Correct? You say you don't have any work to allocate to me, but I'm a full-time employee for you. You'll have to pay salary to me. Even if you're not able to utilize me for 9 hours, you're able to use only for 7 hours. You're able to utilize my services only for 6 hours. I'm a full-time employee. You'll have to pay me salary at the end of the month. But on the other hand, instead of me, if there's a gig worker, will you not cut the amount that you're paying based on the number of works they have done, based on the number of deliveries they have done, based on number of right bookings they have taken? So it will provide a lot of flexibility in terms of paying salaries, in terms of payment, in terms of hiring and firing for the employer. Second one, employees can work for multiple organizations. That is perfectly correct, perfectly all right if you're a gig worker. This month, imagine you're a software engineer. This month, you will basically, right, you have been allocated a project by, let's say, Wipro company. This month, you will finish, submit a report. Next month, you will work for Infosys company as a part-time worker, as a freelancer. You will finish their project. Third month, you will work for, let's say, Satyam company, Mahindra Satyam company. So as a gig worker, you can work for multiple companies. Same thing for Zomato, correct? Right? Maybe, for example, auto drivers. Sometimes they will work for their own, right? They will not use any of the app. Morning, they might use Ola app. They'll take bookings in the Ola app. Evening, they'll take bookings from, let's say, right, another app. So as a gig worker, you can work for multiple enterprises, multiple companies. There is no compulsion on you to stick to only one company. But if you're a full-time worker, let me connect it to current affairs now. If you're a full-time worker, have you come across the term moonlighting? Let me know. If you're a full-time worker, have you come across a concept called as moonlighting? Moonlighting simply means, it was there very recently in the newspaper. Very, very recently it was there in the newspaper. Moonlighting means a full-time worker will start working in addition to one, he will start or she will start working for another company as a freelancer. Right? Imagine I'm a software engineer. Imagine I'm a software engineer. I'm a full-time software engineer in, let's say, right, a Wipro company. Okay, I'm full-time engineer, software engineer in a Wipro company. So morning 9 to 5, I will work with a Wipro company. And after 5, I'm no more a software engineer with Wipro. After 5 o'clock, my work will start with another company, let's say Infosys. I will start providing my services as a freelancer to Infosys. So this process is called as a moonlighting. And why this is called as a moonlighting? Traditional concept, understand this. Morning till evening, you will work for one company. And after evening, after you exit one company, by the time it becomes night, that is once the moonlight will start falling, you will start working for another company. And that is the reason why this is called as a moonlighting. Is the concept clear with you? It's a traditional idea. From morning till evening, you will work for one company. After that, you'll start working for another company in the moonlight. That is the reason it is called as a moonlighting. Right? It's a very simple concept. Right? So moonlighting, is it allowed? No, it is not allowed. Many companies have said moonlighting is not allowed. Right? Many companies say moonlighting is not allowed. For example, Infosys removed many of the employees because they were moonlighting. Wipro removed many companies because they were moonlighting. But some of the companies also have allowed it. And for example, Swiggy. Swiggy said we will allow moonlighting, but we don't want you to work with our competitor. These are the conditions. Follow them. That should be perfectly fine. So I hope you understand the term moonlighting is applicable for a full-time worker, not for a gig worker. Because gig worker is not a full-time worker to any company. He doesn't have any loyalty to only one company. Right? Wherever work is available, they'll simply take it up. Okay? Right? So companies do not have to hire and pay for full-time employment, contributes to the employment, contributes to the growth rate in the economy. So these are some of the points in favor of gig economy. This is why gig economy is actually booming in India. Having said so, there are certain concerns related to gig economy. There are certain problems associated with gig economy. What are the problems? Point number one, there is no job guarantee in gig market. There's absolutely no job guarantees, no security whatsoever. Today you might be hired, tomorrow you might be fired. Right? So at any point of time, you can be removed from the job. There is absolutely no job security. What about hidden benefits? Will you get paid leaves? No. Will you get, right, let's say maternity leaves? No. Will you be given any kind of insurance? Absolutely no guarantees. Any guaranteed salary at the end of the month? No guaranteed salary. Third, the companies, they want to use the labor, right? That is gig worker, but the gig worker doesn't have any loyalty to the company. Right? For example, if I'm a full-time worker in your company, tomorrow I'll have to come to office. Day after again, tomorrow, don't say, sir, tomorrow is a Sunday. How will you go to office? Normally, okay. And moreover, tomorrow is Diwali. You don't want to celebrate Diwali also, etc. No, a normal day, okay. So tomorrow I'll come to office. Day after tomorrow also I'll come to office. So you can always use my resources, use the labor resources to get the work done. But in case of gig work, I will say tomorrow, right? I have a Ola app. I will not start the app only. I'll say I'll not work tomorrow. I will not work day after tomorrow. So don't you think there is an absence of loyalty to the company from the worker side? And same thing will also exist on the other side. That is, company also doesn't have high confidence on the worker, because they also know this person is not a full-time worker. I'm not going to provide any kind of benefit to them. They will jump the ship at any point of time. Right? So employees generally are not provided with hidden benefits. Employees do not have any kind of job security, no guaranteed growth. You will join as a delivery partner, you will continue as a delivery partner. But if you join as a full-time worker, software engineer, after 2 years, you may be promoted as a manager. After 5 years, you might be promoted as a team leader. Why not? There is certain growth that is available for full-time worker. Employee may have to make certain amount of investment. And what do you mean by amount of investment? If you want to work as, let's say, a Swiggy delivery partner, don't you think you should have a smartphone? Think of it. Don't you think you should have a bike available with you? Right? That is the amount of investment. You should have made certain amount of investment. If you don't have it, they will ask you to purchase a bike. Because without a bike, how will you work as a food delivery partner? Without a smartphone, how will you accept deliveries? Right? That is orders, etc. Upskilling may not be provided by the companies because, right, these are gig workers, lowest level workers. That company will not spend money to provide skilling to them. Companies cannot expect loyalty from the employees as well. So these are some of the concerns associated with the concept of gig economy. Anybody has a doubt? Anybody has any question to ask? Please do let me know. Upskilling means the skills that are required to move upwards, vertical movement. Yes or no? If you join as a software engineer, if you want to become a team leader, certain skill set required. If you want to become a regional manager, certain more skill sets are required. So what skills are required for you to move vertically upwards? That is called as upskilling. Okay. Examples of not willing to work. My dear, you quit your job. Next 1 year you want to study for UPSC. Let me know. Okay. Recently, Rajasthan state government implemented a scheme for gig economy, right? Yes, many state governments are doing it. Many state governments are doing it. What reforms have been done for gig worker? Very difficult. I'll tell you why. Private sector doesn't want the government to implement any kind of policies in favor of gig workers. Why? It will basically hamper the private sector. Right? Again, think of it. If you are the owner of a private sector company and the government will make it compulsory for you to provide health insurance for the gig worker, is it not additional cost for you? Think of it. Is it not additional expenditure for you? If government will make it compulsory for you to spend money and provide them with, right, let's say, upskilling, is it not additional expenditure for you? Of course, yes. Right? That is the reason it's very difficult for the state governments or even central government to bring in any kind of reforms in case of gig economy. But they are trying it. They are actually trying it. Do we need to add points on disguised or overemployment? Not required. What we have discussed is more than sufficient. Sir, for inclusive growth, double E, employment elasticity should be high or low? My dear, it should be higher, right? Which means you are generating more jobs. More jobs means unemployment rate will come down. Is it not good for Indian economy? Okay. Example for cyclical unemployment example. My dear, recession. I've told you this. During recession, did we not experience unemployment in India? Yes, that is an example. Okay. Then why do we need to provide social security to the employee so flexible? My dear, you're assuming that the gig economy or the gig employees have a stable source of income. Answer is no. They don't have a stable source of income. There is no stability in the job also. For example, if you want to read a lot about gig economy, there is one report that has been published by Niti Aayog. There's one report which was published by Niti Aayog, right? The argument is simple. For let me take a very simple example. Let's say Swiggy delivery partners. Who do you think will work as Swiggy delivery partners? People who have a stable source of income or people who do not have any source of income? You will see the people who do not have any source of income will end up working as Swiggy delivery partners. And these people generally come from poor households. Trust me when I say this. If you don't want to trust me, check Niti Aayog report. These people will come from poor households. You're asking a person from a poor household to purchase a vehicle, to invest in a smartphone. That is a very, very high amount of expenditure for them. Very, very high amount of expenditure. Do not look at your financial position and think that okay, they don't require any benefits. You're talking about let's say a poor household, right? A household which is mainly dependent on, let's say there are 5 dependents on only one person, and this person is working as a, right, a Zomato delivery partner or Swiggy delivery partner. So I hope you understand the situation. Economic situation from one household to other household is completely different. Hence we need to ensure certain social security benefits are provided to them. Okay, done. So let me go to the next chapter or next concept, inclusive growth. Two more concepts are left out. One is IMF, International Monetary Fund. Second one is inclusive growth. Right? We'll take it up after the break. Time is 5:25 now. Time is 5:25. Let's meet after 20 minutes. Let's start discussion again at 5:45 p.m. Okay, let's restart the discussion at 5:45. Take a break. Okay, welcome back. Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Can we start? Am I audible? Either give me a thumbs up, say yes, anything is okay. Okay, now let's start. Let's start. So, the next concept I'll be discussing will be inclusive growth. Before I start, as usual, the usual announcements. First one, next week, Saturday, you will have a doubt resolution session. If you have any kind of a doubts, please send the doubts to iaslive.com, islive at byju's.com. Keep the subject as economic doubt so that that can be taken up. Second one, some of you are asking for article link. Right now, hardly around 10 seconds ago, there is a link which has been pasted in the comment section. Please check it. The link is available to everyone. Please download the PDF using this particular link. Okay. Now let me start. And third announcement. Many of you are asking, is Monday holiday, Tuesday holiday, Wednesday holiday? No, only tomorrow, right? So Sunday, as usual, it's a festival, so Sunday is a holiday. As usual, you will have classes for Monday. Now let me start. Inclusive growth. What do you mean by inclusive growth? We have already seen the definition. Inclusive growth refers to the pace and the pattern of the growth. Pace and pattern of growth, right? Pace as well as the pattern of the growth, where we are trying to achieve both the growth as well as the development in an economy or in a country. Both of them are connected to each other. Both of them should be addressed, promoted together. So whenever you talk about inclusive growth, what are the features? What are the salient features of inclusive growth? Means what? If you say India has achieved inclusive growth, what will you observe in the economy? What will you observe in the society? One, if I say inclusive growth, you will see that the employment rate is increasing, unemployment rate will be very low. Second, the farmers are earning very good amount of income, right? The farmer suicides will be lesser, distress in the agriculture sector will be lesser. India is one of the very important polluters, important in the sense in terms of quantity. We are one of the largest polluters in the international market. We'll be reducing the pollution, right? We will be controlling the amount of pollution we are doing. We will also have certain reforms to protect the environment. We'll also have a lot of reforms to protect the overall the environment so that we will move towards a sustainable growth. We will also achieve financial inclusion, right? Ensure that all the sections of the society will start getting access to services at a very, very cheaper price. The regional gaps, the regional disparities which are existing, the regional disparities will come down. Income disparities, wealth disparities, etc., which are existing, will also be lower. So I hope you understand, whenever I say India wants to achieve inclusive growth, what are we trying to achieve? What are we trying to achieve? No doubt we are trying to achieve a higher GDP, that is a higher GDP growth rate. But along with that, we also want all these to happen in India. Can we say on one side India's GDP is $5 trillion, at the same point of time, huge income gap is existing in India? Is that inclusive growth? Absolutely no. GDP of India is $5 trillion, but wealth gap is very, very high, right? Certain regions are very well developed, certain regions are very low developed. Can that be inclusive growth? Of course no. We have to ensure growth is also there along with the development, pace and pattern of growth. Okay, now, has India achieved inclusive growth? Because if you remember morning session, 11th 5-year plan, we introduced the concept of inclusive growth, that is from 2007 to 2012. Again in the year 2012, that is in the 12th 5-year plan, we again again introduced concept of inclusive growth. So it's been more than right a decade, more than a decade since the introduction of concept of inclusive growth in India. Has India achieved inclusive growth? Answer is no. Why? Let me give you certain parameters, then automatically you'll understand. Point number one, in India, if you talk about income gap, right, income disparity, wealth disparity, the income disparities are very, very high. Wealth disparities are also very, very high. Let me prove it to you. Right, have a look at this representation. Right, this is a representation from the report in World Inequality Report. There was a report 2 years ago which was published, World Inequality Report. As per World Inequality Report, if you talk about incomes in India, If you talk about incomes in India, the top 1% of India's population earns around 22% of the total incomes, and the bottom 50% of India's population earns right somewhere around 13% of the income. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. If we talk about income disparities, income inequalities in India, the top 1% of the population earns around 22% of the income, and bottom 50% of the population earns around 13% of the income. So please tell me, is there an income disparity in India or not? Is there income inequality in India or not? Of course, yes. Right, and even not just income inequality, gender pay gap is also very high in India. Gender pay gap is also very high in India. For example, same report also stated that in India, out of the total incomes generated, around 18% of the incomes are earned by women workers, and the remaining around 82% of the incomes are earned by male workers in India, which means gender pay gap is also very high in India. So income inequality is existing, wealth inequality is also very high. Right, have a look at the data. Top 1% accounts for 33% of the total wealth in India. Bottom 10%, bottom 50% accounts for right 6%, around 6% of the total wealth in India. So now you tell me, looking at this particular data, has India achieved inclusive growth despite it being more than 10 years of implementation of concept of inclusive growth? Answer is no. India has the largest population in the world. India has the largest population in the world, and within this largest population, a large number of people are poor in India. Large number of people are poor. Large number of people do not get access to sufficient nutrition. Large number of people do not get access to sufficient food grains also. Issue of unemployment is a problem for Indian economy. Not just unemployment, India also faces an issue called as underemployment. Right? Not just unemployment, India also faces the issue of underemployment. What do you mean by underemployment? Whenever a person is working for a job, the job requires a lower qualification, the person has very high qualifications. I'll give you example, have patience and listen first. A person is working for a job, the job requires very low qualification, and the person has very high qualification. So the person working in a job has a higher qualification than what is actually required for the job. For example, have you seen engineers applying for government clerical jobs? Yes or no? Engineers applying for government clerical jobs. Doctors applying for government clerical jobs. Right? A clerical work requires a very low level qualification. But an engineer, right, a graduate is applying for this job. And so is it not a situation where there is a problem of underemployment in India? Yes, there is underemployment, by the way. Right? So unemployment is a problem. Along with that, underemployment is also a problem. Income as well as a wealth inequality is very high. Right? Income inequality and wealth inequality, gender pay gaps, gender wage gaps are very high in India. Regional imbalances are present. Regional imbalances means you take one state, within that state you will see certain regions very well developed, certain regions do not have even access to basic necessities. Can you see that? Within India also, if you take it, certain states in terms of social indicators, they are performing very well. Economic indicators, they are performing very well. Certain other states, they are falling a lot behind. Right? They are falling a lot behind in terms of educational parameters such as literacy, digital literacy, per capita incomes, right, or a school level, healthcare facilities, etc. So these kind of regional imbalances are also existing. Regional imbalances are also existing. Okay. Industrial growth rate, promotion of industrialization, etc., is contributing a lot to pollution. It is contributing a lot to pollution. India is generally considered to be one of the largest polluters. One of the largest polluters. Ranking might change. Generally, India will be ranked third or fourth like this. India is one of the largest polluters in the international market. So, if the question is, has India achieved inclusive growth? The answer is no. We are yet to achieve inclusive growth. It's been more than 15 years since the introduction of the concept of IG. IG is inclusive growth, but we are yet to achieve inclusive growth. Now, why do we need to achieve inclusive growth? What is the need to achieve inclusive growth? India has the largest population now. Earlier it was second largest. This year it is largest now. India has the largest population. More than 140 crore people are there in India. Right? Don't you want to ensure with 6%, 7%, 8% growth rate, every population or every part of the society will get the benefit of it? Second one is, there are certain development and social indicators. India's performance, right, historically has been poor, but in recent times it has started improving. For example, sanitation. What was the situation of sanitation before 20, right? Let's say before 2010 in India. What was the situation of healthcare even today in the rural part of India? What about situation of education in the rural part of India? Right, so in case of especially rural India, certain social indicators we are lagging behind compared to other countries. We are right farther away, right? We are following them. So we need to improve upon our performance in these social indicators. What about economic indicators? Unemployment rate is higher. Underemployment problem is that. And interestingly, some of you are asking why there is underemployment. My dear, you know how many government jobs are created in India? Tell me, do you have any idea how many government jobs are created at the state level, at the central level? And compare that, even if you don't have the data, nothing wrong with that. But just compare that with how many people are searching jobs in India. You will automatically understand, right? How many government jobs are created versus how many people are searching for jobs in India, either private sector or government. Right, you will realize that the number of people who are searching for jobs is very, very high, very, very high. In fact, government data itself says annually, I repeat, government data itself says annually more than 10 million people search for jobs. Additional people search for jobs in India. I hope you understand the statement. I'll repeat it again. Annually, more than 10 million people, additional people, are searching for jobs in India. To existing number of people, extra 10 million people will join and start searching for jobs. So imagine to what extent there is a demand for job. And that is the precise reason whenever government notification will be issued, right, automatically lot of people, irrespective what qualification they have, right, is it much higher than what is actually required, right, they will start applying for it. Okay, right, so India is suffering from economic indicators also. For example, we experienced a recession very recently. Unemployment rate many of the times is on a higher side. Female participation, right, is becoming weaker day by day, etc. And not to forget agriculture sector. Not to forget the agriculture sector. Are you seeing what is happening in agriculture sector now? Right, couple of months ago that price increased, the farmers have suffered. After that, now there is a El Nino, a La Nina, etc. impact. The farmers are again going to suffer, right, and that prices will start crashing, etc., etc. Right, so agriculture sector is also one of the very important economic indicators, but in terms of performance, agriculture sector is lagging behind. Although there has been a higher GDP growth rate that we are achieving, it is not actually leading to, right, creation of more and more jobs in India, and that is leading to jobless growth in India. And interestingly, some of you are now asking, some of you are asking why there is no sufficient jobs generated in India. My dear, did we not discuss a similar point half an hour ago? Please do let me know. Some of you are asking why no sufficient jobs are getting generated in India. Did we not discuss precisely why it is happening in India half an hour ago? Or let's say 1 hour ago? Skilled labor availability, right? Labor laws are difficult, right? Etc. etc. Hardly it's been 1 hour. Hardly been 1 hour. Right? So don't keep on forgetting the things so soon also. You're expected to remember this next year in the mains. It's been 1 hour, and your question is, sir, why do you say sufficient numbers of jobs are not there in India? We have discussed all of it, my dear. Okay. The next, what are the issues associated with inclusive growth? What are the issues? First one, generally, government might decide. Again, I'm not saying government is doing it. Governments might decide, let's target only growth. Let's target only growth. And the growth automatically will lead to higher, right, development. Growth will automatically lead to lower poverty. Now, having discussed for so many weeks, please tell me, higher GDP, does it necessarily mean development is also happening in the economy? Think of it. Higher GDP, does it always mean, right, employment is getting generated? Higher GDP, does it always mean, right, people are able to get sufficient wages? Answer is no. Answer is no. Right? Why? We have seen that if a country achieves a higher GDP, it could be also because the richest people are earning most of the income. That could be the reason. So it doesn't always necessarily mean employment is increasing. Doesn't necessarily mean poverty is coming down. Doesn't necessarily mean agriculture is performing well. Doesn't necessarily mean children are not hungry. It doesn't necessarily mean that. So that is the reason government should not always target growth, should not separate growth and development, should always keep both of them together. We should always target both of them, achieve both of them, and both of them are connected to each other. Okay, right? Growth and development can be achieved together and not individually. Number of poor must be reduced. In India, number of poor, how many people are poor in terms of percentage also, in terms of absolute number also, in percentage also, in terms of absolute people also, right? For example, many will ask me, sir, what do you mean by absolute number and percentage? As per Tendulkar committee, as per Tendulkar committee, 21.9% of the population in India is poor, can be classified as poor. So tell me, is it okay if I say this should be reduced to 15%? Should be reduced to 10%? All of you agree? Yes or no? Please participate. This should be reduced. Percentage should be reduced. Correct. But what if I say only looking at percentage may not give you a correct number, correct assessment of the poverty situation? Please think of it. Only reducing the percentage may not be the right assessment of poverty situation in India. Why? Let's say hypothetically, I'll take a simple number here so that you understand. 10 people are poor out of 100 people. 10 people are poor out of 100 people, which means how much percentage of the population is poor? 10% of the population is poor. Right? Now, 10 people are poor out of 150 people. Second example, 10 people are poor out of 150 people. How much percentage of the people are poor? 6.6%, 6.7 or 6.6%, whatever you want to keep it. Now, has the percentage poverty reduced in this example? Correct. Percentage of people who can be classified as poor, has it reduced? Of course, yes. In example, when it was 10%, now it is 6.6%. But look at the absolute number. Look at the absolute number. How many people are actually poor? Has there been a change? No, there has been no change at all. So that's the reason I'm saying, again, please don't misunderstand what I'm trying to convey here. I'm not saying this is exactly what will happen. I am saying do not always talk about percentage reduction. Yes, percentage also we should reduce. But equally important is how many people are poor. We should reduce that number as well. We should reduce that number as well. That is also equally important to us. right? So number of poor people must be reduced in terms of absolute numbers as well as percentage numbers. Benefits of these reforms have not reached everyone, that's a fact. So government of India must ensure that these growth benefits, whatever GDP growth we are experiencing, the benefits of the growth will reach to all the sections of the society, will reach all the sections of the society. Social infrastructure development has been neglected, but again, please understand, in the last 1 decade or so, social infrastructure is also the focus. It is also the focus, right? Government is promoting development, growth of social infrastructure, such as schools, such as hospitals, right? Such as sanitation infrastructure, etc. Okay. Need to promote investment in research and development so that we will have a indigenously developed technology. We will have indigenously means locally within India. We will have locally developed technologies, right? Certain pharmaceutical products will be developed locally, right? The test can be done locally. Cost of the services can be reduced for the poor people, right? So that is also one more issue associated with inclusive growth in India. Done? Can I go forward now? Now, what kind of reforms have been undertaken by the government? I've given a mind map here. Very nice mind map I've given. Don't by heart the mind map. Just it is just to convey you people, right? How do you address these kind of questions? If you want to talk about inclusive growth, the fact of the matter is we have to promote growth also. We have to promote development also. So please look at the mind map and tell me, have I listed certain schemes which will promote the development of society in India? Correct? Certain schemes that I've listed here will promote development. Development means people will be benefited. Right? For example, midday meals, Annapurna scheme, Mandrega scheme, right? Or BharatNet initiative. What about Atal Pension Yojana, Pradhana Mantri Janadhan Yojana, etc.? Is it not going to promote development amongst the poor people? Of course, yes. Have also listed certain schemes which will promote growth in Indian economy. For example, production linked incentive, Make in India initiative, Startup India initiative, etc. Have also given certain examples of initiatives which will help government of India in controlling pollution. For example, protection of environment. What about electrification, or let's say net zero emission target? Net zero emission target for railways, for overall Indian economy. What about promotion of electric vehicles? Electric vehicles will not help in controlling or protect the environment. What about promotion of renewable energy? Solar energy, wind energy, etc. That will also help us in controlling the pollution that we are causing, protect the environment. So I hope you understand. I've given you a mind map here just to make it much more easier for you to understand. I've given a mind map where you can see multiple schemes of government of India which are used to promote growth, which are used to protect environment, promote agriculture sector also, promote industries also, protect environment, right, etc., etc. So this is some of the schemes. Again, this is not the complete list. For example, government of India under the direct benefit transfer, government of India under the direct benefit transfer has more than 300 schemes, has more than 300 schemes. So you can imagine to what extent we have implemented schemes in order to promote growth as well as development also. So some of them I've lifted and I've given in the form of examples to make you understand. Yes, currently government of India is taking care of environment, promoting growth at a rural level, urban level, industrialization, agriculture sector, protecting the poor people, etc., etc. Done. What is the full form of APY? Atal Pension Yojana. Atal Pension Yojana. APY stands for Atal Pension Yojana. So this is a discussion regarding the concept of inclusive growth. Inclusive growth. And please understand this. Right? Please understand this. Can I say inclusive growth that we have discussed now is connected to most of the chapters that we have discussed from day one? Let me see. Inclusive growth that we have discussed now, it is connected to most of the chapters that we have discussed from day one. For example, growth, GDP, banking sector, financial market, fiscal policy of the government, agriculture, subsidies, infrastructure, etc. etc. So I hope you understand why generally inclusive growth is kept at the last in the discussion. Why it is kept at the last? Otherwise, imagine I would have started first chapter, I would have taken inclusive growth. I would have said inclusive growth, right, is the pace as well as the pattern of growth. Many of you would have asked me, what do you mean by GDP? Tell me GDP first. Teach GDP first, then we'll understand what is inclusive growth. So I hope you understand banking sector, financial market, for example, industrial sector, right? Infrastructure, investment models, subsidies, agriculture, fiscal policy of the government, GDP, right? All of them have interconnections. All of them are connected to the concept of inclusive growth. Why I'm asking about all of this? Suddenly UPSC will try to provide a linkage between inclusive growth and these different chapters. For example, think of it and please do let me know. Don't you think promotion of infrastructure is important to achieve inclusive growth? This was the question asked by UPSC 2 years ago. You need to promote infrastructure to achieve inclusive growth. Correct or not? Right? If you have a doubt, right, let me give you examples. Road infrastructure, railway infrastructure, school infrastructure, housing infrastructure, agriculture infrastructure. Can you connect the dots? Can you connect the dots and say ultimately all of these are required to achieve inclusive growth? This is how UPSC will try to confuse you. Suddenly that kind of question is given, you will blame the faculty. That is me, of course. You will tell faculty did not connect the infrastructure with inclusive growth. Right? Because the argument is very simple. You want to have a welfare of the farmer. So don't you think you need agriculture infrastructure for that? You want to provide welfare to the poor people, hospital, school, infrastructure. You want to promote growth, right? Railway infrastructure, right? Corridor infrastructure. So you are promoting growth also, you are promoting development also. So I hope you understand. I hope you understand there is a very close linkage like this, very close linkage, right? So do not be confused if UPSC will ask you these kind of questions. Now, instead of this question, what if UPSC will twist it and say, there is a need to provide digital infrastructure to promote inclusive growth? Let me see. There's a need to promote digital infrastructure to achieve inclusive growth. All of you will agree? Can you connect the dots here? Right? Can you connect the dots? Inclusive infrastructure, digital infrastructure. For example, tell me, is Government of India using Aadhaar to promote inclusive growth or not? That is, it is connected to financial inclusion. Financial inclusion is connected to inclusive growth. Is Government of India using right digital technologies, right, to transfer funds such as a DBT to ensure financial inclusion is there? Yes. What about e-rupee? So I hope you understand. I hope you understand there are so many connections using which you can ensure that, okay, inclusive growth is achieved. So again, my advice to all of you is whenever such questions are given, think, just give it a minute or two of very good thought, automatically will understand. Automatically will understand that yes, there is a connection. There is a very good connection between what you have discussed and what UPSC is asking. Okay, done. Last concept for the day, idea of International Monetary Fund, IMF, right? International Monetary Fund, okay, IMF. Earlier we have discussed World Bank. One more is left out, IMF. Let's finish it off, which means complete GS paper 3 economics is done for you. Now, let's start. What are the important points regarding IMF? Point number one, it is one of the Bretton Woods twin organizations. Okay, it is one of the Bretton Woods twin organizations. The other one is World Bank, second one is International Monetary Fund. Second, IMF has 190 members. IMF has 190 members. India is one of the founding members of IMF. It is one of the founding members. The headquarters of IMF is located in the Washington. Washington is present in USA. In Washington DC, headquarters of IMF is located. Now, what are the functions of IMF? What is the importance of IMF? Point number one, it will provide loans to member countries. Please tell me, in the current affairs, have you come across this or not? Pakistan taking loan from IMF. Bangladesh, very recently, Bangladesh, right, is approaching IMF for loan. Sri Lanka taking loans from IMF. In recent times, it has happened. Very, very recently, it has happened. In fact, let me show it to you. Slide number 92. Okay. So see here, I think I've given one article related to this. That is loans of IMF. Let me see. Okay, this is also important. I'll come to this. Where is that? Okay, see here, Bangladesh. Please look at it. I've given an article, by the way, right? So because it was there in the newspaper last week only, right? I'm sorry, last week it was there and last month it was there. So Bangladesh has approached IMF and it is taking loans, right? Pakistan is also negotiating for a loan, part of the loan with IMF, right? Very recently, last week, there was one more reform related to IMF. So I hope you understand one of the very important functions of IMF will be to provide loans to member countries. IMF will provide loans to member countries. Point number one. Point number two, it will monitor the policies of the government. Why? Right? Don't you think policies of government of India will affect foreign exchange market? Policies of government of India will affect the stability of India's balance of payment. Does it make sense to you? Right? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. Right? What are the policies of government of India? Will it not affect the stability in BOP? Yes, it can have an impact. Will it not affect the foreign exchange market? Yes. So IMF will also keep evaluating the policies of member countries. It will give recommendations to the member countries regarding their policies, and it will also publish reports such as World Economic Outlook, Global Financial Stability Report, Fiscal Monitor, Regional Economic Outlook, etc. So these are some of the the functions of International Monetary Fund. Functions. Right. Next, what is the structure of IMF? What is the structure of IMF? Now, this structure that I'm giving to you is the most simplest structure of IMF. Why I'm saying it is the most simplest structure? If you go to Google and type structure of IMF and go to the tab of pictures, some of you will be confused. Some of you will be amazed by the structure of IMF. Right? The structure is very complicated. You don't have to remember that kind of a structure. Let me simplify it. I'll give a very, very simple structure. Now, what is the simplified structure of IMF? In IMF, the highest decision-making authority is Board of Governors. In IMF, the highest decision-making authority is Board of Governors. Now, in the Board of Governors, every member country will have two representatives. One is the finance minister. One is the finance minister. By default, the finance minister is referred to as governor of IMF. And right, RBI governor, I'm talking about India. RBI governor is also a member of Board of Governors, and RBI governor will be referred to as alternate governor. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. The highest decision making body of IMF is the Board of Governors, And in the board of governors, the member countries will have two representatives, one, the finance minister, and the head of the central bank. Right? These will be referred as a governor as well as alternate governor. Now, it's a fact that the board of governors cannot meet on day-to-day basis. They will take the most important decisions, but they cannot be meeting every day. So what they do is they will allocate some of the functions of IMF, that is the day-to-day activities of IMF, will be allocated to one more authority, which is called as an executive board, which is referred to as executive board. Right? So whatever functions have been allocated by the board of governors will be taken up by executive board. In the executive board, there will be 24 members, and the executive board will take care of the day-to-day activities of IMF. For example, what are the day-to-day activities of IMF? The board will discuss aspects such as what is the work of the IMF, right? Is there any country which is facing an issue? Right? Review the policies of government of India, government of USA, government of China, etc. Prepare reports. If any country wants to take a loan, prepare that particular proposal, give it to board of governors. Right? Quota should be increased. Prepare a report, give it to governors, etc. But it is the board of governors which will take the most important decisions of our IMF. For example, how much quota should be allocated to member countries? I'll come to that, have patience. How much quota should be allocated to member countries? Should quota be increased? Should we allow any other country to join IMF? Should we remove the countries from IMF, that is from the membership, etc.? All of these important decisions are taken by board of governors. Board of governors. Right? Now, in addition to the board of governors as well as right the executive board, there are two more important right councils, or let's say committees, which are going to advise the board of governors. One is called as a development committee. Second one is IMFC, International Monetary and Financial Committee. One is a development committee and the second one is International Monetary and Financial Committee, IMFC. Now, in case of IMFC, there are 24 members. Along with these 24 members, those will start asking me, sir, what are these 24 members? I've given the list. Do not by heart it. Please do not waste your time. Do not by heart it. UPSC is not going to ask you list of 24 members. IMFC, 24 members are there. India is one of them. The IMFC will meet twice a year. Along with these 24 member countries, right, international agencies such as the World Bank, other international agencies are a party to the discussion. They will give advice to IMF. In addition to IMFC, there is also one more committee called as a development committee. In the development committee, there are 25 members. World Bank, right, will also participate. Other global organizations will also participate. That this committee will also give advice, right? Will also give advice to the board of governors. Now you will ask me, sir, is India present in the development committee also? Of course, yes, India is present in the development committee as well. Right? So this is basically the simplest structure. This is what I would advise to you. Right? If you don't trust me, go to Google, check the structure of IMF. It is very complicated. Do not worry about that complicated structure. Focus on the simplified structure like this. Focus on the simplified structure. Okay? Right? So this is the structure of IMF. This is the role of the board of governors as well as the executive board. Can we go forward now? Can we go forward? Who is the governor, alternative governor? Already I've told you this. Finance minister is the governor. Head of the central bank, that is RBI, governor is alternative governor. From every member country have one board of governors of IMF. My dear, again I'll repeat it. In board of governors, every member country is present. Whereas in case of executive board, 24 members are there. So what we do is 190 members will be grouped. There will be different groupings like this. From all of these groupings, one person will represent right, in the executive board. Okay, done. Next, the functions of IMF. The functions of IMF. IMF is mainly involved. Understand this carefully. IMF is mainly involved in giving loans to member countries. That is one of the primary functions of IMF. That is the most important functions of IMF. IMF is involved in giving loans to member countries. But please tell me, if IMF wants to give a loan, IMF should have money with itself. Correct? All of you will agree with me? If IMF has to give a loan, IMF has to have money with itself in the first place. So through what sources IMF will collect money, and under what tools IMF will give loan? Understand that. How IMF will collect money, how IMF will give loans. Now, one way to collect money is basically every member country will contribute to IMF. Every member country has to contribute to IMF. Second source of money for IMF is member countries will provide loans to IMF. The member countries under different agreements will provide loans to IMF. Right? So all of you are okay with this? IMF should have money in order to provide loans. Now let's find out how IMF will get money. There are two sources. One, every member country has to contribute money to IMF. Second one is member countries under different arrangements or agreements will provide loans to IMF. Right? So first, contribution. Right? Contribution is done by the member countries under a system called as quota. Please be very careful with this. Contribution to member countries is done under a system called as quota. Now, what do you mean by quota here? Quota, in a simple terms, represents what is the relative position of a country in the global economy. I'll repeat the statement. What do you mean by quota? Quota represents what is the position of a country's economy in the global market. What is the relative position? How do you calculate what is India's position in the global market? There are four parameters and there's a formula for it. And using these four parameters and the formula, they will calculate what is the quota. What are the four parameters? By heart, four parameters. Do not learn everything in detail. You do not have to understand what is economic variability. You do not have to understand what is openness. You do not have to understand, right, what is the importance of reserves, etc. Do not waste your time. In fact, let me ask you a very simple question. This is a formula used. A into 0.5 plus B into 0.3 plus C into 0.15 plus D into 0.05 whole bracket at the rate of compression factor CF at the rate of, right, basically at the top, compression factor. A simple question to all of you. How many of you think UPSC will ask you to solve this formula? Let me see. How many of you are under the impression that UPSC, not UPI, UPSC, sorry, will ask you to solve this formula? So I hope you understand. These are the four parameters. By heart, the four parameters. And just to provide you the benefit, I've arranged them in the descending order of the weightage. In the descending order of their weightage. So this is the formula used to find out what is quota for India. What is the relative position of India in the global market. Now just give me 1 minute. Let me show it to you. This was there in the current affairs. Let me show it to you. And that's the reason I'm asking you people to read these articles. Okay. Now, have a look at this article. Please have a look at this article. IMF board approves 50% quota rise to help developing nations. This happened last week, in fact. Please be very careful. That's the reason. IMF board has approved 50% quota to rise, 50% quota rise to help developing nations. What do you mean by this? I said IMF, let me explain this, listen to me very carefully. IMF will provide loans to member countries, correct? But to provide loans, IMF should have money. Now, IMF will collect money in the form of contributions, that is quotas, also will borrow money. From member countries will borrow money. Now, please tell me, if quota contributions are increased for all the member countries, if quota contributions are increased for all the member countries, and the amount of money that IMF will have to lend will remain same, can I say it means the dependence of IMF on borrowing will come down? I'll repeat it again. As of now, IMF says it has around $1 trillion. It has around 1 trillion to provide loans. And now IMF has increased the quotas for all the member countries by 50%, which means every member country has to provide more contributions to IMF. If more contributions are collected and the amount of money they want to keep, the reserves that they want to have to provide loans is still the same, can I now say the dependence on the borrowings automatically will come down? That is exactly what is going to happen. Read this article, you will understand it. Right? Read this article, you will understand it. For example, have a look at this. I'll show you certain data here. Read this part. Of course, you should read the whole of article. My recommendation, read the whole of article. This part. Read this part. India's quota, India's voting right is discussed here. Right? And the last part is also very important. Right? Last part is also very important. Read this article. That is the only reason why I've given it. Right? Now, come back to the discussion. So first source of funding for IMF is quota. All of you okay with this? The first source of funding for IMF is quota. What is quota? It's a number. Quota is a number. For example, India's quota is around 13,000 plus million STR. I'll come to SDR also. India's quota is somewhere around 13,000 million STR units. So it's a number which represents a position of Indian economy in the global market. What is the relative position of Indian economy in the global market? That is called as quota. Now, apart from quota, I said IMF will also borrow. Apart from quota, IMF will also borrow. What are the sources through which IMF will borrow? There are two very important arrangements or agreements. Please remember this. First one is called as New Arrangement to Borrow, NAB. First one is called as a New Arrangement to Borrow, NAB. And second source is called as Bilateral Borrowing Agreements. Bilateral Borrowing Agreements. Should you remember the whole picture? Absolutely no. I'll tell you what is the concept. In the new arrangements to borrow and bilateral borrowing agreements, IMF has entered into an agreement with certain groups of countries. IMF has entered into agreement with groups of countries. And these group of countries have assured IMF, have told IMF, if you require funds, we are ready to give you loans. Very simple, right? Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. What is this new arrangement to borrow as well as bilateral borrowing agreements? Under both of these, there are certain member countries of IMF who have assured IMF, if IMF requires money, they are ready to give loans to IMF. That is basically the concept of new arrangement to borrow and bilateral borrowing agreement. Under NAB, there are 40 members, 40 participants in the group. India is one of them. India is part of both of them. And under NAB, IMF can borrow up to 361, or right, let me talk in terms of dollars now, up to $521 billion from all these 40 members in the group. And in case of bilateral borrowing agreement, IMF can borrow up to 193 billion dollars from all these right 40 plus group, 40 plus members in the group. That is basically the argument. Okay, can I go forward? Do not by heart the data. Please do not by heart the data. Right, very difficult to remember all the data. Please do not by heart the data. Can I go forward? So one method will be to collect contributions from member countries. Second will be right borrow under a system called as a NAB as well as a BBA. Right, so totally put together, please have a look at this picture now. Totally put together, right, the resources which are available to IMF, put together the resources which are available to IMF is somewhere around 1 trillion STRs. 1 trillion STR. Now many of you will ask me, sir, what is this STR? Right, many of you will have this doubt, what is this STR? STR basically stands for special drawing rights. STR will refer to special drawing rights. That is STR. Now, what is this STR? STR is a reserve asset which was created by IMF and has been issued to all the member countries. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. Just like Government of India has created rupee, correct? Just like Government of India has created rupee, IMF has created an asset in the market which is called as STR. STRs have been issued by IMF to all the member countries of IMF. It has been issued by IMF to all the member countries. And IMF will decide what is the value of 1 unit of STR. IMF will decide what is the value of 1 unit of STR. For example, if you just check, if you basically just check, you'll realize that, again, Google, I'm talking about Google, of course. If you check the value of 1 unit of STR in the Google, you will realize that the value of STRs are generally given in terms of dollars. Okay, value of STR are generally given in terms of dollars. And you will realize that 1 unit of STR is given in terms of dollars, where right the value of STR is lesser than value of a dollar. That is the data that you might come across. They might simply say one STR unit is equal to, let's say, $1.50, right? One STR units might be equivalent to $1.4, etc. So what is the value? What is the value of 1 unit of STR? It is decided by IMF. But to decide the value of STR, IMF uses one more parameter which is called as basket of currencies. There is a basket of currency which is used by IMF. Value of the basket of currency will keep on changing, and when the value will keep on changing, the value of 1 unit of STR will also keep on changing. Now, many of you will have difficulty in understanding how they will calculate it, etc., etc. My advice to you, don't worry about all of it. Trust me when I say UPSC will not ask you, show me how 1 unit of STR value is calculated. UPSC will never ask you it. In fact, even in the optional paper, they will not ask all of this. Why? All of these are very, very technical in nature. In that case, UPSC is expecting you to have a degree in mathematics. Forget about economics. UPSC is expecting you to have a degree in mathematics then. So again, my argument is simple. Right? For example, I gave you this particular formula. I showed you this formula. Some of you are asking, sir, is it important? Should I remember it? No, please don't remember it. That was the point I was trying to convey to you people. Should you remember this formula? Absolutely no. UPSC is never going to ask you this formula. Forget about asking you about calculations using the formula, because in that case, you will have to know how compression factor is used, because to the power there is compression factor here. You will have to understand how compression factor is used. how all of these parameters are calculated for each of the countries. Lot of mathematical calculations are there. You don't worry about rest of the things. Simply focus on what I'm telling you to focus upon. Okay, done. So STR is a kind of a currency. It is a kind of a currency. We'll call it as a reserve asset, which has been created by IMF. But why I have not written term currency here? If I write currency, you will equate that with rupee. I will use rupee to purchase any goods and services in the market. SDR cannot be used like that. Is it okay? STR is not a currency which can be used to purchase goods and services. Absolutely no. Then what is the use of STR? STRs are basically issued by IMF to member countries. If a member country wants to sell these STRs, they can sell it to other countries. And in return, they can get dollars. They can get other currencies as well. For example, let's say India has 100 SDRs. Let's say hypothetically, India has 100 STRs. And today, let's say one STR unit is equal to $1.5. I'm just throwing arbitrary numbers here. Don't worry about calculation. So 100 STRs are there with India, and was one SDR unit value is equal to $1.5. So can I simply say, if I sell all these 100 STR units to any other country under IMF, any other member country of IMF, I will get $150 from the other country. Yes, right? $150 from other country. So next point, because it is equivalent to $150, can I count STR as part of forex reserves? Let me know. Because it is equivalent to $150, can I count it as a part of forex reserves, foreign exchange reserves? Again, the answer is yes. Again, the answer is simply yes. Do not be confused here. Please go back to banking chapter. RBI maintains all the forex reserves in India. What are the components in the forex reserves? We have gold, we have foreign currency assets. We should also include STR. We should also include STR, special drawing rights, under this. Okay, right? That is one more point. Now, what are the currencies which are included? What are the currencies which are included in basically the calculation of 1 unit of STR? I've given you the list here. I've given you the list here. Please have a look at it. Please have a look at it. I've given the list here. So in the context of this, what is important? One, please remember the list of the currencies. And if you are able to see, right, please look at carefully. Can I say India's currency? India currency, that is rupee, is not listed here. Correct? India's currency is not listed here. At which means, right? Please remember, in the calculation of right, the STR value, rupee is not included. What is included? Dollars. What is included? Euro, Chinese yuan, right? They will use the term Chinese yuan, or else they can also use the term renminbi, right? Chinese yuan or renminbi. They can use either one of them. Please don't get confused. Please don't get confused. Okay. Now, apart from this, you have Japanese yen, you have pound sterling. Right? So these are the currencies. Weightage is also given. Please remember the weightages, or remember in descending order. It is there already in the table in the descending order, by heart in the same sequence. Right? So these are the currencies which are considered in order to calculate 1 unit value of STR. And what is the use of STRs? Right? Whenever IMF will allocate quotas, it allocates in the form of STR units only. When IMF will give loans, it will give in the form of STR units only. When IMF will collect loans back, it will collect in the form of STR units itself. In an essence, in a simple terms, STR is a currency. Again, I will not use the term currency because I am worried if I say currency, you will simply assume you can purchase goods in the market using STR. So it is a reserve asset which has been issued by IMF. Transactions conducted by IMF always is in terms of STRs. Can we go forward now? Can we go forward? Now, please tell me, if quotas, if India's quota is increased, can I also say STR allocated to India will also start increasing? Let me see. If India's quota will increase, does it not also mean the STRs allocated to India will also start increasing? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. That will also start happening now. And that is the importance of the article that I've given. Now, apart from STR, there is one more concept called as reserve tranche. Now, I'm entering into lending part. I'm entering into lending part. Until now, collection is over. Now, let's look at lending part. One very important source that every member country of IMF can use to take money from IMF is a reserve tranche. Listen to me very carefully. One very important source that every member country uses to take money to borrow from IMF is called as reserve tranche, or else this is also referred to as gold tranche. It can be referred to as a reserve tranche, or it can also be referred to as a gold tranche. Now, what is this reserve tranche or the gold tranche? I'll take a simple example here. Listen to me very carefully. Imagine there's a country X or XYZ, because then they will say X is not a country, it is a company. Let's say there is a country XYZ. XYZ has contributed money to IMF. Correct? Under quota system, it has contributed money to IMF. Let's take an arbitrary number, 400 crore rupees. Let's say XYZ has contributed 400 crore rupees to IMF, right, under the quota system. Now, IMF says, I repeat, IMF says up to 25% of this. I'll repeat the statement. Up to 25% of this, you can take it back. You can take from me, borrow from me, without having to pay any charges, without having to conform to any conditions. I'll repeat the statement. Every member country will have a quota. Quota means contribution. Out of this, whatever is your quota, out of this, up to 25%, up to 25% of this money, you can borrow from me, take from me, without paying any charges on it, without paying any interest, without confirming, without agreeing to any conditions. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what is this condition you're talking about? Let me ask you a very simple question. A country such as Sri Lanka is facing crisis. Bangladesh is facing an economic stress now. Pakistan is facing economic crisis. IMF will provide a loan to these member countries. Don't you think IMF will impose certain conditions so that the governments will implement certain policies to come out of this situation? Does it make sense or not? And if you still have a doubt, imagine IMF will give a loan without any condition. What is the guarantee that the government will use the money for the right purpose? What if the crisis in the country is further increased because of wrong policies of the government? At that point of time, basically IMF has given a loan, it will lose the money. Right? The country is not improving. That is the reason conditions are imposed. Conditions are imposed. Can I give you current affairs example? In the recent times, has the Sri Lankan government increased the tariffs on electricity? Check it in the Google. In recent times, has the Pakistan government imposed very high taxes on petrol and diesel? It has been done. It has been done, by the way. If you're wondering, sir, has it been done? Yes, it has been done. That is the only reason I'm giving examples. The government of Pakistan increased the taxes, very high taxes on fuels, on petrol. What was the argument? The government of Pakistan said, IMF has imposed conditions. One of the condition is, I will have to collect more taxes. And why am I imposing more taxes on petrol? So that I will collect more taxes. Right? So in order to meet the conditions of IMF, I'm imposing all of these taxes. So generally the government, whenever they want to take a loan from IMF, certain conditions are imposed by IMF. But there's a criticism also. There's a criticism. What is the positive aspect related to this condition? IMF says the country is already facing crisis. If I do not impose any condition and give loan, then the country, that is the government, might misuse these funds. They might, right, further implement policies which will increase the crisis in the country. That is basically the argument. On the counter side, right, the counter arguments, that is opposition to this, is IMF is an international organization. India, right, let's say Pakistan, Sri Lanka, if on these countries IMF will impose conditions, don't you think that is against their sovereignty? Think of it. Don't you think that is against the sovereignty of the country? Second concern is, already in the country, because there's a crisis, people are suffering. Already because of crisis, people are suffering. Now, IMF will ask the government to reduce expenditure. IMF will ask the government to increase the taxes collection. So government will reduce expenditure, which means burden on the people, right? Assistance to the people removed. On the other side, government will impose more taxes on petrol. Again, is it not going to affect the common man? So a country which is facing a crisis, you are burdening the common man in such a country. Right? So that is a criticism. That is a criticism, right, regarding the conditions imposed by IMF. Okay. So, but again, come back to the discussion here. Reserve tranche position. What is this reserve tranche position? Up to 25%. Up to 25% of your quota, you can borrow without meeting any conditions, without paying any charges to IMF. That is called as a reserve tranche position. Now, next point, please look at the numbers that I've written on the board, on the slide here. Can I say if this is applicable to India? It means at any point of time, India can borrow up to 100 crore rupees from IMF without paying any interest. Correct? India can borrow up to 100 crore rupees without paying any interest. Instead of 100 crores, what if I write in dollars? At any point of time, India can borrow 100 crore dollars from IMF without paying any charges, without following any conditions. And that is the reason, please remember, even the reserve tranche is counted as a part of forex reserves. Even the reserve tranche is counted as a part of forex reserves. Let me show you a table here. Please look at the table. This I've taken from this year's economic survey, and the most recent economic survey. Right? Again, don't by heart any data here. Please do not by heart numbers. UPSC is not going to ask you numbers. The total amount of forex reserves is given here. And what they've written, the total amount of forex reserves is a sum total of column 3, column 4, column 6, and column 7. What is there in the column 3? What is the value of the gold? What is there in the column 4? How much is reserve tranche position? What is there in the column 6? What is the value of special drawing rights? And what is there in the column 7? How much foreign currency assets? How many foreign currency assets? What worth of foreign currency assets are there with Reserve Bank of India? So whenever you talk about forex reserves, now it is okay. It is a sum total of gold plus foreign currency assets which are there with RBI, the reserve tranche position at IMF, plus the STRs that are there with India which have been issued by IMF. So the sum total of all these four components will give you forex reserves. Is it okay? Is the first type of loan product or lending activity by IMF, is it okay with all of you? Reserve tranche position or the gold tranche. Up to 25% of your quota, you can borrow without paying any interest, without coming under any of these conditions of IMF. Now, apart from this, there are multiple types of loan products available. I would recommend simply by heart the names. Do not by heart in detail about each and every type of product. I'll repeat the statement. Apart from the concept of this one, the reserve tranche, there are different types of ways through which member countries can borrow from IMF, and each of the product is different from another product. Conditions are there, rate of interest, for what duration the loans are given. For every type of loan it is different. Do not by heart everything in detail. My recommendation, simply by heart this table. Simply by heart this table. That is what is there in this table. There are different types of loans which are given by IMF to its member countries. But whenever the loans are given, IMF can impose a rate of interest or may not impose any rate of interest. That is, there are two types of loan products here. One is called as a concessional loan. Second one is called as a non-concessional loan. Now, please tell me, imagine IMF is giving loan to two countries. Let me see how do you assess. IMF is giving loan to USA. IMF is giving loan to, let's say, Zimbabwe. Now, please tell me, should IMF give a loan at a 0% rate of interest to USA? Does it make any sense to you? Should IMF provide loans at no rate of interest to USA? Answer is no. What about Zimbabwe? Yes, sir, Zimbabwe needs money. So for Zimbabwe, IMF may provide loans at 0% rate of interest. So argument is simple here. There are certain loans which are given for least developed countries. Least developed countries. That is very, very poor countries. And these loans are concessional loans. Only the poor countries are allowed to take loans under concessional lending. Whereas every member country can take loans under non-concessional lending. Now, some of you will ask me, sir, if Zimbabwe can take loan under concessional lending, why will it take loan under non-concessional lending? I'll tell you the answer. Please tell me, if IMF is giving a loan under concessional or non-concessional, do you think unlimited amount of loans will be given by IMF? Let me see. Do you think unlimited, any amount you want to take, however you want to take, how much loan you want to take, how many times you want to take, right? Do you think always it will be given under concessional lending? No. Whenever loans are given, please remember this. Do you remember the term quota? Right? Do you remember the term quota? How much is your quota will determine how much loans you will get. I'll repeat the statement. Right? How much is your quota will determine how much loans you will get. In fact, even under the reserve tranche, what was the calculation did we did there? Even under the reserve tranche, did we not take 25% of quota? I hope you understand. Even under RTP, we took 25% of quota. In the same way, whatever loan products are available under IMF, what is your quota? That quota will determine to what extent you can take loans, either under concessional or non-concessional. But the concessional loans are available only for the least developed countries, only for the poor countries, and non-concessional anybody can take. Least developed, right? India, Zimbabwe, South Africa, China, USA, anybody can borrow under the non-concessional. Now, what are the types of tools which are used by IMF under concessional as well as non-concessional? Rapid credit facility, standby credit facility, extended credit facility. These are concessional type of loans. Non-concessional, rapid financing instrument, RFI, standby arrangement, extended fund facility, these are under the non-concessional. Now, if you want to complicate it, my recommendation, don't. If you want to complicate it, you can read, you can buy heart under rapid credit facility, how much loans are given, to what extent loans are given, what will be, right, let's say what duration the loans are given, it will be extended by how many months, how many years, how repayment is done, is there any relaxation in terms of repayment, etc., etc. You can do that for all the types of loan products. My advice to you, don't. Because as far as I am concerned, UPSC is not going to test you to that extent. I don't expect UPSC to test you to that particular extent. Why? Trust me when I say this. Because I know many of you will not trust me. You'll go to IMF website and start reading about everything in detail. Please do that. Later you'll understand why I said no. For all the loan products, tenures are different. Relaxations are provided. Rate of interest is different. How much you can borrow, that also varies from one country to another country. That is the reason my advice to you, just stick to the basics. More than sufficient, just simply stick to basics. Okay. Now, if you want to read more, I've given one more table here. Right. For example, SBA, standby agreement. Repayment is done between 3.25 years, extendable to 5 years. Extended fund facility for emerging and advanced countries, repayment is up to 3 years. Right. Rapid financing instrument, repayment is done in the range of 3.25 years, extendable up to 5 years, etc., etc. I don't expect UPSC to ask you a question on this. I don't expect. Why? Very difficult to remember all of these technical numbers. 3.25 years up to 5 years. Right? 5 years only. 3 years only. Very difficult to remember all of it. But if you want to know more, you can go to IMF website. My advice, don't waste your time. Done. So these are the different lending instruments which are used by IMF. One is borrowing. Second one is lending. We have a reserve tranche, we have a concessional as well as a non-concessional. And for example, if you read about Bangladesh, you will realize what kind of instruments they are talking about, right, when they want to lend to Bangladesh. And what about India? Has India borrowed from IMF earlier? Yes. Right. The last time we borrowed was during 1991 crisis. When we faced a crisis back in 1991, India borrowed. We have repaid. After that, we have not borrowed any money from IMF. Is it okay? I'll repeat it again. 1991, there was a crisis in India, and we approached IMF, and we have repaid all those loans. After that, we have not borrowed anything, and we don't have any repayment liability towards IMF as of today. Right? So that is the point regarding India and IMF. India is one of the founding members of IMF. What do you mean by founding members? When IMF started functioning, India was one of the member countries. Okay. India currently has a voting right of 2.63. Right. In fact, let me show it to you. 103. Right. Let me show it to you. Right. It is there. All of this. All of this information is there. Right. If you're reading current affairs, all of this information is already there. I will not be able to zoom this article, but I'm aware of the fact that you people, right, in your system, you can zoom it. Please, read this paragraph. You'll understand what I'm talking about. This paragraph, as well as this part of the paragraph. You'll realize that India's quota at IMF is over 13,000 million STR units. And India's quota in terms of percentage is 2.75%. And in terms of voting right, India's voting right is 2.63% of the total in the IMF. Right. So this is basically the factual information regarding IMF. Again, I expect UPSC to ask questions based on this information rather than asking you to calculate formula, calculate this, a rate of interest, etc. India has not taken any financial assistance from IMF since 1993. Whatever loans we had taken, we have repaid by 2000, and after that, we do not have any outstanding loan liability towards IMF. Right, so these are certain important points regarding India as well as IMF. So this is the end of the discussion as far as I'm concerned related to IMF. If anybody has a doubt, please do let me know. Otherwise, we will solve the questions. Then I'll tell you the strategy for preparation. Then we can wind up the discussion for the day. NAB and 2020. Are Baba, I'll repeat it again, understand this. IMF has entered into different arrangement or different agreements with group of member countries. If IMF requires money, IMF already has collected quota. Imagine IMF has collected all the quota, and if all the quota amount is given in the form of loan, IMF will require money now. So if IMF requires further money for lending purposes, for its operational purposes, they can borrow. They can borrow. There are two different arrangements or agreements. Right, so that is basically how IMF will borrow from the member countries. And of course, if they borrow, they will have to pay interest and repay the amount later. Okay. Reserve tranche, second point, not understand. What is the second point? You don't keep on telling me third point, fourth point. Tell me the name of the point. Tell me, sir. Right, at this point, I did not understand. Not clear. Why should we get 25% and with a condition, my dear? If you're a member, IMF says up to 25% borrow. You don't have to pay any money for that. Borrow. So it's a facility. What is wrong with that? You tell me. IMF says this facility is always available to you. Take up to 5%. Don't pay any interest. Don't pay any charges to me. It's a facility. What is the problem with the facility? Tell me, what is the problem with the facility? Okay. What IMF gave loan of much money, I couldn't be paid back like countries. Bangladesh, I'm unable to understand. What is disguised unemployment? My goodness. I think I've explained the term disguised unemployment at least around 5 times. 5 times in the classroom. Disguised unemployment means a situation wherein more number of labor units than required is used. More number of labor is used than what is required. That is the reason I said, even if you require 2 people, you'll end up using 3 people. Productivity does not change. Example also I've given you multiple times. Agriculture sector. Okay. Is the quota to be kept at IMF for member countries permanent or periodical basis? Periodical basis, the quota will keep on changing. Member countries will have to contribute. Bilateral, multilateral borrowing difference. Again, please understand this. Let me ask you a very simple question. Imagine you have certain amount of salary. Once you run out of salary, you generally tend to borrow money from your friends. Yes or no? Once you run out of your salary, you tend to borrow money from your friends. Now, what if you have taken money from your friends? That is also not sufficient. Will you not borrow from your parents? Will you not borrow from your relatives? So argument is the same. Apply the same argument. IMF has collected quota from all the member countries. What if IMF runs out of its quota amount? It has used all of its quota amount. Then they will go borrow under the first tool. That is also not sufficient. They will borrow under the second tool. Right, multilateral and bilateral. That is how IMF will use all of these tools to borrow. Okay. What is special drawing rights? Special drawing rights is an asset which has been created by IMF, has been issued by IMF, it's to member countries. What is the value of 1 unit of STR is decided by IMF by taking into consideration a basket of currency such as Chinese yuan, Japanese yen, right, or renminbi, euro is there, pound is there, as well as dollar is there. So looking at all of these, right, looking at all of these currencies, value of these currencies will change. Hence, the value of 1 unit of SDR will also change. Okay, done. So let's start solving questions here. Let's start solving the questions here. Start now. Okay, 49% have answered correctly. A straightforward question. What is the difficulty here? Recently, which one of the following currencies has been proposed to be added to the basket of IMF's SDR? I've taken directly from UPSC, hence it says which has been proposed. And as of now, it is part of a basket only. It is a Chinese renminbi. Chinese renminbi. It is Chinese renminbi which has been included already. Because it is a UPC question, I have not changed the statement of the question. Right, as it is, I have pasted. So Chinese renminbi, right, was proposed. Now it is part of it. Right option is option D here. Next one. Right, I'll not start polling here. You tell me, it's a straightforward question. This was asked last year by UPC. Last year in the prelims. Check the paper, you'll understand. Rapid financing instrument and rapid credit facility are related to the provisions of lending by which of the following? Straightforward, International Monetary Fund. Don't make a mistake. It's a straightforward question. Again, of course, right, in the UPSC exam, they will not be putting it under IMF. Question will not be after IMF chapter, but I hope you understand why I say don't waste your time in dealing with all these lending instruments in detail. It's a simply waste of time as far as I'm concerned. Let's start. With reference to International Monetary and Financial Committee, IMFC, consider the following statements. IMFC discusses matters of concerns affecting the global economy and advises IMF on the direction of its work. Statement is correct? Yes, statement is correct. The World Bank participates as an observer, right? Just as an observing party. It doesn't act as a member. It is not a country per se. It is just observing. It is participating in IMFC. Statement is also correct. So the right option for this question will be option C, both 1 and 2. Right? Both 1 and 2. A descriptive question. The nature of economic growth in India in recent times is often described as jobless growth. Do you agree with this view? Give arguments in favor of your answer. Give arguments in favor of your answer. Right? Introduction, as usual, 3 parts. Introduction, main body, conclusion. Introduction, define what is jobless growth. Give the definition of jobless growth in 1 or 2 lines, more than sufficient. Then come to the main body. Why are we saying that there is a jobless growth phenomenon in India? Why are we saying this? The reason is that investments have become more capital intensive. The employment elasticity has started declining. Right, a lot of GDP contribution, more than 50% GDP contribution comes from services sector, and service sector is not as much labor generating compared to manufacturing sector. Right, the skilled labor availability is also very low. So citing these, we are saying there is a situation of jobless growth phenomenon in India. Now, having said so, Government of India has implemented various policies, various measures to address the problem of jobless growth. For example, Skill India, Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana, National Apprentices Scheme, Job Melas, right, Make in India, etc. So various reforms by Government of India have been implemented in order to address the issue of jobless growth phenomenon in India. Done. What are the salient features of inclusive growth? Has India been experiencing such a growth process analyze and suggest measures for inclusive growth. Start with introduction. Define inclusive growth. Define inclusive growth. After that, main body, what are the features of inclusive growth? Protection of environment, growth in the incomes of farmers as well as agriculture, employment generation and lower unemployment rate, financial inclusion, right, etc. etc. These are the features of inclusive growth. Has India achieved inclusive growth? No, right? That is what you will have to explain. Point number one, the percentage of poverty, or so the number of poor people in India is very high. Lot of population doesn't get access to nutritional, right, food or sufficient nutrition food. Right, development of social infrastructure has been lagging behind. We are promoting it now. Right, India, though has the highest population, also experiences unemployment, underemployment. So these are the points to prove that. These are the points to prove that we are yet to achieve. We are yet to achieve inclusive growth. Then we can simply say, government of India, right? No doubt there is a issue related to inclusive growth. Government of India has been implementing various reforms such as Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, right, or Make in India, production linked incentive, promotion of the renewable energy sector, etc., in order to promote and achieve inclusive growth in the coming years. Right, so this is answer to the question. Okay, these questions we have discussed earlier, right? Why FDA is required, what is the problem, etc. We have discussed all these questions. SEC also we have discussed. Done? Okay. So this is the end of the discussion for you people. Now, coming to the questions regarding preparation strategy. Many of you will ask me, sir, what is the strategy that I should follow? What strategy should I follow to make my preparation easier? This is the recommendation. First class also I have told you, last class also I'll tell you. This is a strategy that I would recommend. First one, be very clear, be very clear with your static portion. Whatever concepts are there in the static portion, read it. And when I say static portion, should you refer to 4 books, 5 books, 8 books, 20 books? A big no. Refer to only one book. One book more than sufficient. Do not refer to 10 books. One is sufficient. After the static is over, current affairs. After the static is over, please update current affairs. Please update current affairs. Read papers, one paper, two paper. I know it is difficult. I know it is difficult. UPSC preparation is not that easy. It's difficult. Initially, you'll find it difficult. But over a period of time, you will get the hang of reading multiple newspapers. So I would recommend be very comfortable. Update your current affairs. Please update your current affairs. Third, questions. As many questions as possible, solve them. Right, previous year questions, the test papers, descriptive, solve as many questions as possible. And fourth point will be revise. Fourth point will be simply revise. As many revisions possible, revise. Now many of you ask me, sir, revision takes a lot of time, it is difficult for me to revise, etc. What should I do? I would recommend use a mind map like this. Of course, this mind map is not that clear because the whole chapter of national income, I've created the mind map for the whole chapter. So obviously, because I've inserted so many points for the whole chapter, clarity will not be there. But I'm pretty sure all of you have the PDF, PPT of this magnified. You'll be able to see what we have discussed in the national income chapter, complete national income chapter. I have created only one slide on it. And again, all of this is not in a detail, but important points. Important points. For example, right, what is GDP? What is GDP? What we have discussed regarding GDP, the definition of it, the measures used to calculate GDP, the latest methodology to calculate GDP. These are the three important subheadings that we have discussed. I've written points regarding all of them. Then, right, concept of GNP. What is definition? What is the idea behind GNP? How do we calculate GNP? right? What is the points? 2 to 3 points I've written regarding GNP. Same thing for NDP, NNP, etc. After that, we have discussed per capita income. I've written certain points regarding per capita income, right? What is the importance of measuring national income, right? We need it for making policies. We need to make it to compare other countries and find out how we are performing over a period of time, how we are performing, etc. And what are the issues in terms of calculation of GDP. For example, right, we generally do not consider pollution, damage to the environment. Getting the data from informal sector is very difficult, right? Lot of difficulties. Wherever there is a non-monetized consumption, very difficult to measure that. GDP simply is a quantitative concept. It doesn't give you quality information regarding poverty, etc., etc. So the issues I've written here, and whatever current affairs is there in the newspaper, I've written on the other side. So this would be my recommendation to you. Prepare a mind map for all the chapters. Initially, it will be difficult for you, but once you prepare the mind map, tell me then after the 1 month, after 2 months, is it easier for you to revise or not? Let me know after that. I've given you a mind map for inflation as well, right? Same way, I've created a mind map for inflation as well. I've given the mind map. So my recommendation to you people will be create mind maps. Create mind maps, right? It will take, let's say, 7 days or let's say hardly 15 days. Once you create mind maps for economics, revision of your static portion for the next 1 year will become very easy. Try it once. This is one strategy. Try it once. If it doesn't work out, you can create your own strategy. But I would advise try it once, right? See, you will only see automatically there is an improvement in terms of time taken, in terms of recollection, etc. after 1 or 2 revisions of the mind map. Done. Okay, so these are the things I wanted to discuss with you people. I If there are no doubts, then I'll wind up the discussion for Indian economy. When will be my next session? For evening session, for evening classes, evening batch, it is the last session. It is the last class. Next session, I believe annual calendar has been given to you. Please check it. I believe it is there somewhere in the mid-December. Okay. Any other questions? Which chapter should I concentrate more? My dear, read all the chapters. Don't waste your time. Right? Read all the chapters. Read all the chapters because time is still there. Do not try to find out only this chapter now, only this chapter, etc. No, I would recommend read all the chapters now. Okay. Next Saturday, do you have a class? It's not a class per se. It is a doubt resolution. Doubt resolution. In case of doubt resolution, I repeat what will be the process. There is a email ID islive@byju's.com. Any kind of a doubts you have, please send your doubts to that, right? Send the mail to that. Keep the subject title as economy doubt. I'll be taking up those doubts and discussing in the classroom next Saturday. Okay. How often should I revise? There is no universal answer to this. Why? I'll tell you. It all depends on one person to another person's memory power. It all depends on the person's memory power. If you feel within 15 days you tend to forget the subject, my recommendation, once every 15 days revise. If you feel right once a month, yes sir, I can retain the information for 1 month, revise in a month. Right? So one person to another person, the recollection capacity is different. You know how much is your memory power, strength of it. Accordingly, you prepare. Okay. Current affairs, my dear, I've given you for 6 weeks now, 1.5 months. I've given you for more than 1.5 months. Start reading. Start preparing on your own. Right? How much spoon feeding you want me to provide? Right? How much spoon feeding? Start preparing on your own. UPSC, trust me, if you start reading on your own, preparing your notes on your own, UPSC becomes easier rather than becoming overly dependent for everything on the faculty. Right? I've given you for 6 weeks now. Start making your own notes now. Okay. Okay, done. Any other doubts? Sir, I'm giving attempt in 2027. Should I focus on economics more or just go through syllabus? If you are if you're appearing in, let's say, 2027, focus on the static now. 15 months prior the exam, focus on the current affairs. Okay. How do we find out which are current affairs important articles? My dear, you are done with the whole GS paper 3 economy, right? Now in the newspaper, if you come across an article regarding sovereign gold bond, is it not important? Sovereign green bond, is it not important? Direct listing of companies in the foreign market, is it not important? FDI policy of government of India, is it important or not? Right, working policy, right, that is let's say the inclusive growth policy, right, through various reforms of government of India. So I hope you understand there is no formula. You are expecting a formula. There is no formula, right? I'll give a very simple example to all of you. If you read a book titled How to Ride a Cycle in 7 Days, does it mean you have learned by reading a book? Think of it. Please apply basic idea. I'll give a book. How to learn cycling in 7 days, or how to learn swimming in 30 days. You will read the book, you will revise the book twice. Does it mean you have learned cycling? Does it mean you have learned how to swim? No. Until unless you go to the cycle, start cycle, pedal it, fall with the cycle, have certain scratches, you will not learn how to ride a cycle, my dear. You will never learn. In a simple way, if you want to understand how to write a mains answer, start writing. Take up an article, let's say Hindu editorial, take it up. Read the article, make a question, try to write the answer in 150 words. You might find it difficult 1 week, second week, but by the third week, it will become much more easier. Same in the context of reading current affairs also. Yes, reading newspapers is a big headache, but what is the next solution? What is the alternative? Right? So you will have to find an alternative. No alternative. You will have to start reading. Maybe 1 week, 1 month, you'll face difficulty. After that, automatically you will start understanding, okay, this article is important, this article is not important, etc. etc. Done? Okay, so that's it from my side. That's it from my side. Take care. Right, enjoy your festivals tomorrow, but enjoy it safely. That is more important. Enjoy it safely. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. All the best to all of you. Read well. Do not panic. Lot of time is there. Start with basics. Update with current affairs. Revise. Solve questions. That's it. Okay. So take care. All the best.